Check one.
Blog Talk Radio.
Oops.
Here we go with the main event of the evening. Ladies and gentlemen in attendance, boxing fans joining us around the world. It's time for the Matthew Ball we've been waiting for. Finally, it's showtime.
Here, man, we dedicate our lives to this sport. We do thousands of sit-ups in camp. We run hundreds of miles, for the ones that take it serious. And we just dedicate ourselves fully to our craft, man. We watch tape. We attitude, we rooting, and we go into that fight just to land on the line.
Hey, what up, boxing fans? This is the Rope-A-Dope Radio Podcast. I am your host, Chris Carlson. We are live on a Tuesday night, back with some more boxing talk, of course. We got a variety of things to talk about, and of course, one of them has to do with Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson and Roy Jones Jr. Any way we can activate the casuals, if you look at since October, probably 4 different events have activated some casuals. And sometimes that's what it's all about, right? Anyway, a couple of items there that I'm happy about as far as no one got hurt. It created attention. There's a variety of things that we're going to talk about that. I did get some messages via DM and whatnot about that I was hating on it last week for calling it an exhibition, but, Mike actually said it. He said fight and then, clarified it, actually, and called it an exhibition as well again. So, it was an exhibition, and that's okay. That's okay. But I'm glad it feels like most people got their money's worth. Anybody, I really can't complain too much about the judging because it wasn't going to be judged by judges. There's plenty of problems with judging, as we know in boxing, but, once you bring in the celebrity judge, once again, it's an exhibition. So you kind of lost me on the, what the hell, he got robbed, this is a disgrace, but then, it's an exhibition, dude. Calm down. Anyway, speaking of calm down, that's exactly what Joe Joyce did to Daniel Dubois, calmed his eye down. Hopefully he's okay. A lot of people getting on him saying he quit, he's done, he doesn't have the heart. We'll talk a little bit about that. That jab was sharp, obviously not just the one that landed. And we'll talk a little Jake Paul too, guys. That Nate Robinson, Jake Paul thing. One thing I'll say straight up, though, the production value was on point. The way, like I said, they activated, the casuals. They definitely had a lot of celebrity influencers online. The thing was everywhere, so kudos to them. And then Snoop Dogg. That's another thing. Most people were like, Snoop Dogg, that was perfect, because of what it was. And I thought the production team, like I said, the production, the look of it was on point, but they also didn't take themselves too serious in this one because, after all, it was an exhibition. But you did see kind of the old man get off my yard type stuff. Hauser wrote an article. Some people were like, you can't rip on Snoop when you just bought an exhibition on pay-per-view. You see what I mean? Like, I just don't understand how you're going to complain about Snoop when you got two 50-year-olds fighting 8 rounds, 2 minutes. Like, it's kind of like complaining about the judges. Well, you knew there wasn't judges, but I did get called a hater from a variety of sources, and that's okay. I was just for basically reading the rules to make sure everybody knew, because a lot of people late were just listening to the promoters. Then all of a sudden the rules came out, and they're like, and it wasn't just come out. I mean, the commission early on wanted to make sure. That's how they commissioned this thing. That's how they sanctioned it. But Yeah, I got a little hate, which I assumed I would, no problem. But it is kind of funny, that you're getting mad at me, calling me a hater when I'm just reading the rules, dude. Because I have people that said, I thought it was going to be real. I thought 2-minute rounds. Like, I got some text messages, from people. And so it's like, dude, I don't know what to tell you, man. But anyway, it is good seeing both of them, but especially Mike doing something constructive. He lost some weight out of this. He's mentioning a charity, so that part is good. A couple of questions, though. And they didn't make fools of themselves. That was another thing I was worried about. Besides people getting hurt, nobody got hurt. He's still like, I hope they don't embarrass themselves. And that's one key thing is they did not embarrass themselves at all. They gave, considering, and you have to consider their age when you look at the fight. You can't think that they were actually going to really just go nuts. And you could even see Tyson had the left hook, but he just couldn't follow up on it. Whether that means he was holding back or not, whatever, it's an exhibition, so it is what it is. But is the trilogy next? That's right. Holyfield. Is that next? Evander Holyfield and Tyson, the trilogy. I heard people saying, Roy Jones was holding. He was holding. Well, yeah, he was holding. But, I mean, isn't that the way Evander Holyfield beat Tyson? Pop, jab, hold. Big right hand hold. Like, that's how he did it too, right? You got, strategy. Styles make fights. Anyway, it is what it is. No matter what you thought about it, it is what it is, right? And I'm glad nobody got hurt. Like I said, anytime you can touch those casuals, a lot of people pissed at Jake Paul, but he's not fighting boxers, dude. So, I mean, what do you want from the guy? Anyway, we are going to talk about this weekend's pay-per-view coming up. Errol Spence Jr., Danny Garcia. A lot of the talk is Errol. Will his face, sounds funny or whatever, but will his face hold up to punches? You know what I mean? Most people think, Danny Garcia is going to lose this fight. He's always got a puncher's chance. His counter, he's tough. He's got a great chin. We've seen that time and time again. But at 47, he's come up short, against Thurman and against Porter. So we're going to break that down, the pay-per-view undercard a little bit. Mostly like stylistically, some of these fights have a chance to be very entertaining, but I wouldn't call it like the co-features, like the It type co-feature. I think that's missing, but hopefully we get some entertainment out of it. We'll go over the rest of the fight schedule. The second episode of the NBC Sports Network, Ring City, is going to be on too. And by the way, at some point here soon, he is live reporting right now. Jake Donovan, senior writer from Boxingscene.com, will be on as well. We had him on a chunk like a month ago or whatever. So we're going to follow up on some of that and just talk about a variety of things going on in the sport. A lot of people had a good, feedback from John as well. He's going to call in tonight. The number to dial is 646-314-990. Press 1 if you want to listen, but if you just want to chill, that's cool too. No problem. You know what I mean? There's some other news out there. Oh, boy. Oscar wants to fight Golovkin, and I feel like this is just TMZ type stuff. But maybe he says, that's the type of opponent that I had a lot of success with. And he's old, too. We'll talk a little bit about the quotes. Oscar, hey, man, if it constructive thing for Oscar, can you really blame him? And also he lost Canelo. So can you really blame him? He talked a little bit about the placement early next year. I believe he said January 2nd for Garcia and Campbell. We'll talk a little bit about that. Teofimo Lopez is basically trying to stick it to Bob. Hey, I got a mandatory guarantee now, Bob. And he's been really announcing how that goes. We did hear about a huge payday potentially in Australia next, but he also talks about Madison Square Garden. So we'll see how that goes. There's a variety of other current fight news. Of course, we'll have some of that the boxing Twitter segment that we usually close the show with. That is starting to pick up steam because, of course, it's boxing Twitter, dude. Of course we can pick up steam. yeah, we'll jump into that in just a second. If this is your first time listening to the Rope-A-Dope Radio podcast, welcome. It streams live right here on blogtalkradio.com/Rope-A-Dope Radio. It streams live at Archives. It's kind of the headquarters. But, you don't have to go to Blog Talk, download the show, or listen to the browser. You can find the Rope-A-Dope Radio podcast on Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, Player FM, TuneIn, almost across the board. We're also part of the Grueling Truth Sports Podcast Network, which can be found almost anywhere, including Spotify. While you're at it, why don't you head on over to gruelingtruth.com. It's boxing, football, baseball, I just said boxing, basketball, a variety of things. They cover it all over there at thegruelingtruth.com. One more thing, if you're thinking about cutting the cord or you're not quite happy, I got something for you. It's called AT&T TV Now. It's live streaming cable. Get a 7-day free trial. There's no annual contracts. Once you sign up, the plans start as low as $55 a month. You can stream it anywhere. They have the cloud DVR, of course. And just for signing up right now, you get a 30-day free trial of HBO Max. Here's another layer. If you sign up for the Max package, that includes HBO Max plus a free month of Showtime. And normally, boxing fans, it does seem like Showtime is in business this year, right? It's only $11 normally, but this is a free month, something to think about. AT&T TV Now, like I said, live streaming cable. Okay, we're going to go ahead and bring in senior writer from Boxingscene.com. I got to say, and not just because he's on the show, but my favorite media guy, good old Jake Donovan. What's going on, Jake? How the hell are you, buddy?
Well, I'm doing even better after that intro. I really appreciate that, Chris. Thanks for having me back on the show, man. Always a pleasure.
Oh, yeah. Of course. And, we talked last time about a variety of stuff. It mostly focused around the top-ranked run, which I understand the zone's pretty steady in December, but if we're going to talk about the quarter, there's really not much anybody's going to be able to do to top what Top Rank did. So we're going to kind of catch back up with that. Of course, we're going to talk Spence and Garcia, and of course, we got to talk Tyson and Roy Jones, and just a couple other items that we'll get to, no doubt about it. But as far as, let's just go with this weekend since it's hot. Boxing, engaging with the casuals is a tough thing to do, and with the Teofimo fight, with the engagement and the viewership. Same with Kell Brooks. Same with Gervonta, the engagement he had. And now Mike Tyson and Roy Jones. We're already hearing about this huge pay-per-view number. First, have you heard anything about that vaguely? But also, this thing, the look of it was great. Snoop Dogg, for what it was great. They had influencers everywhere. As we know, they did a great job marketing online. This thing captivated the audience, Jake. There's just no way around it.
Yeah, it was weird, too. It's like it was one of those things that kind of snuck up during Fight Week, because up until Fight Week, I didn't notice a whole lot of engagement. Like, people kept talking about it, but maybe it was just a matter of, the manner in which they were promoting it. Because, let's face it, boxing fans were definitely not the target audience for this show. Like, my nephew kept saying, he's a big gamer, and he said, he's seen it on Twitch, he's seen it, in platforms he was on. But it's not like they went over the top with the promotion, but they did find a way to touch all the right spots. And then, especially as the week progressed, you had Lil Wayne tweeting about it, Snoop tweeting about it. They had, all these, celebrities, that raising awareness. It was the right celebrities, too, that are bringing in all, this different type of audience. So I thought they did a phenomenal job. The production was top shelf. They did a very professional job. It wasn't like just some slap together low budget pay-per-view where they were just, some big money grab or whatever. It was, they presented a true event. It's like Triller, they're trying to compete with TikTok to kind of dominate that market. And I thought they did a fantastic job in that regard. It's like, even if their only goal was to sell their own product, it's like they put on, a credible, production enough to where, people would want to, sign up, look into their service and, delve into that world. And a lot of people, they had an issue with especially the old boxing heads, going from the fight to the musical acts. I thought it was a breath of fresh air, personally, because I can't stand. I don't need to hear 30, 45 minutes of talking heads just kind of killing time until we get to the next fight. It's like I love they fight a little bit, they recap the fight, talk about the next one, and then get to the next fight. I thought the music was a nice break. It was like I wasn't necessarily a big fan of of all the acts. I thought French Montana did a really good job. Snoop, of course, killed it. St. John depends on whether or not you just you like him. I'm not particularly into him, but I thought each set was a decent amount of time. Wiz Khalifa I thought maybe ran up. It probably could have been a song or two shorter, but it was for the audience that they targeted though that's what they were looking for. They were looking for fights. They were looking for entertainment. They were looking for entertainment within the fight. So the show delivered on all that fun. No, it didn't deliver any championship boxing, but again that wasn't the goal for the night.
Exactly. They hit their target, and it's funny because same with my nephews. And a lot of that age, when you really thought about it, even people in their 20s, they haven't experienced a fight night. And sure, it wasn't that. Of course, we know that. But just the idea of it was pretty freaking cool for these people that have never been able to experience a fight night. So, and no matter what the pay-per-views do, because we always talk about a number on pay-per-view, but even with Floyd, when we talked about the guarantees, just how much money did they spend? But who cares about the success of the pay-per-view? Because, like you said, it was really about their product, and that thing got out there. And I agree with you. Early on, it wasn't that normal, commercial run or anything like that. I think that they said, well, people are going to think what they're going to think about it on the hardcore level. It is what it is.
Yeah.
But digitally, that last couple days really blew up. And that's a good point about, well, would you rather have 40 minutes of dudes talking over or showing clips you've already seen on all the build-up shows? That is a good point. Now, maybe you can go overboard with that, but hey, it is what it is. And for the people that are talking about Snoop, like, oh, Snoop can't do this, but you just bought a pay-per-view with two 50-year-olds fighting an exhibition, so which one is it?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, that's a great point. I don't know. I'll use this as a barometer. My wife really, she supports everything I do, with my writing or whatever. She doesn't really watch boxing with me. She made a point to sit down and watch it with me, and she was laughing hysterically. Not just because of Roy Jones and Mike Tyson strolling into the ring with their dad bods, but just everything Snoop said. It was just like it gave everyone like a bet. Like you felt good watching this show. I mean, yeah, it was a spectacle, but that again, everyone knew that you knew what you were buying going in, and I think everyone was entertained, even for the the hardcore boxing fans. Going back, the first two fights of the night were really solid. Edward Vasquez and Irvin Gonzalez, that was a hell of an 8-round fight between those two, and then Jermaine Ortiz, the way he finished off Sula Masagawa. It's like I want to see Edward Vasquez next. I want to see Jermaine Ortiz's next fight. I even want to see Irvin Gonzalez's next fight. For that matter. So, you did get, some real boxing. You got that mix. And then, then you got the spectacle. You got to see Purdue Jack finally not get robbed by the judges. He got to beat the hell out of someone for 8 rounds. And then, whatever you want to make of Jake Paul and Nate Robinson. I love the one guy I loved was Israel Adesanya. I thought he did a fantastic job on the mic. He caught me off guard in the beginning, like just when there are levels to this shit. It's like, oh, you don't expect announcers to talk like that, but there's no filter. They're not restricted to not curse. So I thought it was cool that he just leaned all the way into that aspect. I thought he sounded very comfortable. He did a really good job with it. Again, Snoop came on with the comic relief later on, so it was entertaining from start to finish. I was not bored by any aspect of that show on Saturday night. I don't want to see something like it every single month, granted. I like it as a one-off, maybe as like a once a season, if they're going to do the Legends Tour. I don't need to see a Legends Tour every single month, but like a once a season break, I would gladly welcome it.
Yeah, and another thing about the Jake Paul thing, this stuff's happening. It just is what it is. So we're not going to stop it for those purists. And nowadays, a purist in boxing, when you think about it, Jake, it's like, so what are you a purist of now anymore in boxing?
Right.
It's not going to go back to the 80s, but even at a purist view, they think the 80s was just like they were doing steroids or something. It's like, well, hold on now.
Exactly.
Like, do we really want to talk about the 80s? Because it was phenomenal, but let's just keep it all in, I don't know. But the thing about Jake Paul is, my view is, if it's going to happen, I'd rather young people be exposed to somebody putting on gloves in getting in a boxing ring rather than a UFC ring or an MMA ring. I mean, isn't that something? Because when they do see a real fight, they're going to be like, oh, shit, wait, hold on. This is really good.
Yeah. Yeah, and, a lot of people bring up that point, too. They keep saying, UFC is kicking boxing's ass, and, UFC is drawing in, the younger audience. It's like, well, how come all these guys aren't going to the cage? Why isn't Jake Paul, going? It seems like if that was true, Jake Paul's audience would be in UFC, so why not take them all there? He knows there's a bigger, a greater revenue path in boxing. So that's, Jake Paul, Logan Paul, all these guys, that's the path they're going to go on. I agree with you 100%. If they're bringing these guys back, especially on shows like this where they're bringing more, if Jake Paul's fighting on a card where a guy like Jermaine Ortiz and Edward Vasquez, I'm going to keep going back to them. If they're going to benefit from the exposure, then, God bless it. I'm not really all for it. I do appreciate that. It seems like Jake Paul is taking it more seriously than some of the other YouTubers. Certainly, the first guy he beat, I forget his name, Anderson Jeb, whatever. I even think he's taking it more serious than his brother, to be honest. If you had like a YouTube tournament, I probably would pick Jake Paul to win it. So I don't know how far he's going to go.
He can straight punch. I know people don't want to hear it, but he can straight punch, dude. He really can.
Yeah, I said this to my nephew after that fight, too. I said, if Jake Paul's going to keep fighting, I said, I don't think a Conor McGregor fight is going to happen next. I'm not even sure if he's going to fight Dylan Dennis. But I would like to see him fight KSI. Just bring closer to that whole thing. KSI beat his brother by some whatever decision. So let them fight, and then from there, Jake Paul has to make a decision. If he wants to be a boxer, he has to start fighting real guys. He can't keep fighting the Nate Robinsons and Addison Gibbs of the world, or however you pronounce the guy's name. He can't keep fighting those guys who are massively, less experienced than he is. He's going to have to start fighting, quote-unquote, real guys. Now, granted, there are some 0-2, 0-3 cruiserweights that he can fight to build up his record if he wants to take this seriously. So, I mean, we're kind of seeing, that, his career kind of evolving that way. I don't know if he wants to take it seriously. I'd have to imagine he's making far more money, doing whatever he does on YouTube than, what he's doing in the ring. But, if there's a path for him to grow both platforms. And, the thing I kind of appreciate about him, not that I'm a fan of any of that by any stretch, but he's allowing himself to be used by boxing. It's like he knows what he wants. He's getting more money out of it. Boxing is using him in return. So it's kind of like a win-win when he is involved. Maybe it sounds like me advocating for it. I'm not necessarily – I don't want to see every show, involving these guys, but maybe he can help these other guys, finally, market themselves better and say, okay, well, if you're bitching about, me getting these opportunities, here's what you can do to get these opportunities. So hopefully, guys will learn for it. I said it back in, I think it was December or January. Actually, it was after the Logan Paul KSI fight when Arthur Jones, the third, was getting ready to fight on the Super Bowl card. Like all of a sudden, he did all the same stuff. He was showing people how to download the zone. He did all that on his Twitter feed, on his Instagram feed. Guys are starting to take advantage more of social media. So, fighters just have to realize, promoters aren't necessarily going full throttle and promoting them anymore. So you kind of are on your own doing this stuff. Some guys get it. Jake Paul gets it. Tyson Fury gets it. I think, even a guy like Errol Spence gets it. Deontay Wilder definitely gets it. So, the rest of the sport, they're just going to have to start following those guys' leads, that, waiting for someone to, toot the horn for them.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it. And speaking of just engaging the casual base like we've been talking about, that October, November, and really, let's be honest, late August for Top Rank. We talked about it the last time you were here, about a month ago. And, as far as the way it turned out, the second half of the Loma and Teofimo fight was much better than the first half as far as competitive from a casual standpoint. But the two ratings that they got, some other fights down the stretch, just in general, like I said, late August and on, one, kudos, like we said, even before this run, right, to Top Rank at ESPN. But now that we're here, can they carry some of that into next year as well? Let's start at what they did good, though. They popped on ratings and made some damn good fights down the stretch. We could sit there and talk about July and June and all that, but that's long gone.
Right. Yeah, no, that, like I said, that October, it was definitely a great stretch for Top Rank. They were genius in, announcing that whole October, those 5 weeks. Even the week they lost, it's like it didn't really hurt their schedule because you saw a star was born with, Teofimo Lopez. Maybe he was a star already, but that was certainly, if he was, then that was his breakout performance. You still kind of want to see Vasily Lomachenko's next move, even though he lost. And, people maybe didn't care for the manner in which he handled that defeat. But, you know, Inoue finally came to Las Vegas and, you know, handled the business against Jason Maloney. You know, so the next step in the career of Edgar Berlanga, who is going to fight again, you know, Elvis Rodriguez, you know, a lot of things went so right. And, of course, that, you know, unforgettable fight between, you know, Jose Zepeda and Ivan Baranchez, which, you know, is still the leader for fight of the year, you know, and still a contender for knockout of the year. I mean, there's been so much that's happened. We almost forgot. But, like, okay, well, that's what kind of kicked off that whole stretch. So the Terrence Crawford fight, it was what it was. The second fight between Andrew Maloney and Joshua Franco just became a mess. But somehow it got people talking about boxing, even if for all the wrong reasons. But it's, you know, maybe we just need to keep shining a light on, you know, all the things that are wrong with the sport so we can finally fix it. But, you know, at the very least, though, Terrence Crawford did get a fight in 2020. You know, there's some things he has to work out with Top Rank moving forward. You know, I think he's going to stick it out with them, maybe just kind of go in a different direction. Bob's not going to handle the business as much, but you know, he got that fight in. Now he can look towards, you know, returning in the spring. So all the fighters they needed to fight in 2020, they managed to do that. So, you know, Top Rank does deserve full credit for that. So, you know, I'm glad that most of those fights panned out, you know, during October and then bleeding into November. The only one we didn't get was Beterbiev, but, you know, hopefully we're getting him in the first quarter of 2021. But again, he wasn't really crucial to the schedule. I even forgot Michaela Mayer. She won her first title. So, and she's someone if Top Rank fully commits. You know, they're not really in the women's boxing business, but they are in the Michaela Mayer business. If they fully commit to her, then, you know, there's a lot of money to be made in her division. I mean, that 130-pound division is loaded, and then, you know, whoever's the last woman standing gets to go chase after Katie Taylor for, you know, I mean, that's a massive super fight, you know. So that, you know, there's, like I said, Top Rank, they took a lot of steps, you know, in leading towards what could be a big 2021 if they handle it right.
That's right, and we're not even mentioning the fight that got postponed with hopefully postponed Burchell and you know, Valdez, who should kick off next year. Now, Spence Garcia this weekend. Obviously, a lot of it comes down to, you know, the face. Can his face hold up? A lot of people talking about that. We've seen that they've done. We're used to Fox like a month out at least really pushing it. I've seen it on Fox, on football a whole lot, college football a little bit as well. What's your thoughts on this fight? It seems like event-wise, it's going to be cool to have a crowd, obviously, you know, safely anyway. The undercard looks like it's entertainment. It could pay off. They don't have that key co-feature where you're like, oh, I care about that fight just as much as the main event. Hopefully we get the entertainment value, which I think we'll get, but we'll have to see. But what's your thoughts overall about the Spence-Garcia matchup?
Okay, I'm going to get the negative out of the way because I pride myself on being objective. People view me as an unbiased writer, and I take a lot of pride in that. This undercard is a dog. This is the worst pay-per-view undercard they've had out of the pay-per-views they've done this year. So, like you said, hopefully there's a hidden gem in there because, you know, I'm even looking at, like, you know, I'm thinking of, you know, the stories I got to write this week, but, like, how many different ways can we keep writing? This is supposed to be the Lopez's last chance. This is Gia Santana's last chance. You know, where does Eduardo Ramirez go from here? I mean, he got the opponent switch, so that was, you know, a new storyline that came with that because Ceja's out. But sadly, that was, like, probably the one fight I really was looking forward to because I thought it was kind of a really solid, not quite loser leaves town match, but you know, it was like two featherweights that really needed to win, and neither one of them were really in a boring fight. So, you know, it's a shame that fight couldn't happen, but at least Ramirez is getting to stay on the card. I think he's going to be fighting Miguel Flores, and I believe that's going to be the opening bout of the pay-per-view. I know they were kind of, you know, fudging with the lineup. But beyond that, I'm glad that Spence and Garcia are getting this fight in the books. And it's weird that so many people are focusing on, okay, well, what does Spence have? Like, what? Obviously, it's a natural reaction. It's like, what is he going to look like on December 5th, his first fight, you know, since, you know, that horrific car accident. But the thing I kept focusing on, I've written a couple of stories on this too. This is the fight that Danny Garcia wanted well before that accident took place. He was in the ring with Errol Spence as soon as he beat Sean Porter and solidified his place as the best welterweight in the world. Danny Garcia was supposed to fight him in January. You know, he wasn't waiting on, you know, a broken down Errol Spence or a recovering Errol Spence. He wanted, you know, Errol Spence at his absolute best. So he's going into this fight, you know, facing, you know, believing he's going to be facing that version of Errol Spence. So I think, I don't know, a lot of people are down on this on Danny Garcia's chances. They seem to bank it more on Errol Spence not having what he once had. I think it's going to be a very competitive fight, and I think Danny Garcia is still going to be able to, ask a lot of questions to Spence, even, moving well beyond, is his punch resistance still there? How much has he recovered since the accident? I think Errol Spence has come back all the way. I don't think he'd play Russian roulette with his life, in that sense. You could argue, well, maybe he did last year with his reckless drive or whatever. But in the ring, I don't think he's going to be that foolish and say, okay, well, whatever. If I don't have it anymore, I'm just going to cash out in this fight. It doesn't seem like that type of opportunity. I kind of get the sense that if Errol Spence knew he wasn't ready, he just wouldn't fight in 2020. Because he's the type who's going to want to fight the big fight. He's not going to want to tune up coming back into the ring. He wants a real opponent. He believes he's ready. I believe he's ready. I know Danny Garcia is going to be ready. So I'm really looking forward to that main event. I figured it would be more competitive than, Gervonta Davis and Leo Santa Cruz. I thought that was going to be a little bit more of a blowout than it actually was. I mean, that turned out to be a really good fight with an incredible knockout, which probably will win knockout of the year if Alexander Povetkin and Dillian White doesn't. But, I'm looking forward to that. And even as stacked as was the September 26th pay-per-view, there wasn't one fight in particular that made me say, oh, my God, I got to buy this pay-per-view. It was kind of like the whole card as a whole. I'm looking forward more to Spence Garcia more so than any other pay-per-view headliner that PBC has had since the pandemic.
Yeah, and they've usually, even when they go to promote it, Jake, they put the co-feature in the poster at times. That's how good their co-features sometimes are. But, yeah, we really need these two of those fights just to be entertaining. So you're like, okay, I'm getting some value, but other than that, we'll see how that goes.
One thing, and I'm going to cut you off. I was going to say, one thing that with PBC, though, especially Tom Brown, all the matchmakers over there as well, they do have a knack for that. I mean, there is a sense that Josecito Lopez and Chia Santana should deliver on the action front. And I believe Jorge Costa can test Sebastian Fundora a little bit. I think Fundora eventually is going to handle him and steamroll him, but it's going to be in a fun way. So I don't really see – I'm looking at, the undercard. I don't think any of these fights are going to be particularly boring, or at least the fights that we're going to get to watch.
Sure.
So that's a positive. Even with the October, the Gervonta Davis, Leo Santa Cruz card, it's like you looked at that undercard and go, Mario, Ryan Calder deserves a shot, even if it's a secondary title. But, every fight on that undercard was fun, and they all ended in knockout, too, including the main event. So,
last fall, Wilder Ortiz – that Wilder Ortiz undercard actually performed better than we thought too. So
yeah, exactly.
Who knows?
Yeah, it's one of those things that you can't review, with skepticism. But it's like, you're one of those nerds that's like, okay, I need that, fight on the undercard that stands out. You're not getting it this weekend. I wish it was, and the reason why I wish it was a stronger undercard is because there's so many PBC guys that either they didn't fight this year, or if they did, it was like a time marking fight. It's like they probably have the deepest stable in the sport, and not all of them really had any kind of meaningful fight since the pandemic, except on pay-per-view. So that's I was hoping some of these slots would have been used for a Caleb Plant, maybe get Caleb Plant one more title defense this year. But that's up to the fighters too. If they don't want it, then you got to put the guys in there who do want to fight. So it is what it is. But I am looking forward to this weekend, especially because it is the last pay-per-view show of 2020. So.
Right, and on paper, we got to look at it on paper, but then what I think you do well and what we should do as media and part-time media is judge it in the ring, too. So let's not just talk, a lot of people, this will go down as a horrible, undercard or something. Okay, well, let's see. But, on paper, it's not something to boast about or anything like that, that's for sure. Right. One last thing, news items that you'd like to discuss, or even – obviously December is going to close pretty well. We could kind of preview that. Maybe some first quarter fights that are lingering. Anything that you'd like to talk about here in the last little part of the segment, sir?
Well, one thing I'm really looking forward to is it kind of got lost in the shuffle because we talked so much about Top Rank schedule and obviously everything PBC has done since the pandemic. The Zone is finally back on the right track because I don't think any platform has been rougher than the Zone since the pandemic. They were supposed to have their global launch. Then this thing happened. They lost that. They lost, the Canelo, Billy Joe Saunders fight. They lost a lot, and it had massive layoffs. They're, looking for, new ways to kind of, rebuild their platform. And a lot of people genuinely worried. It's like, okay, well, are they going to survive this pandemic? And even if they do, it's like, what is their product going to look like? And their first few shows out of the pandemic have not been great, with the exception of the incredible, the Superfly triple header in Mexico City with, Juan Estrada and Chocolatito Gadame. I mean, that was an incredible night of boxing. Julio Cesar Martinez. So other than that, though, they've had some dogs. It's been a rough stretch, especially last weekend. I mean, even Eddie Hearn was like, I'm not going to say embarrassed, but yeah, he was crapping on the main event, and then that's his fight. That's his company that put that forward. So I mean, so now they're moving forward with this global launch. It just started today. It's weird that the first fight out of the global launch is going to be Billy Joe Saunders and Martin Murray. The U.S. side, it was supposed to be Ryan Garcia and Luke Campbell, but obviously that got pushed back to January 2nd. So we're talking about fights lingering for the first quarter. There's one of them. But then they have this nice stretch. They got Anthony Joshua fighting on the 12th. They got Gennady Golovkin coming back on December 18th. He's got his mandatory. And then, of course, Canelo Alvarez and Callum Smith. Just because it's Canelo, it's one of the biggest fights of the year. And I don't think it's any guarantee that he's going to, Callum Smith is a big super middleweight. So I think he's going to, ask a lot of questions that Sergey Kovalev maybe wasn't in the position to at this stage of his career. So that's a hell of a fight to kind of end 2020. So that's the zone is finally hitting its
especially how it went
really at the right time.
Especially in coming off Golden Boy too. You're like, ooh, it's just the whole setup of the zone. Just the whole setup of the zone. Like Showtime added subscribers because people signed up during the pandemic. Fox is going to be okay. Like just the whole setup, the zone had a rough one. You're right. Like every way around.
Yeah, they did. So, right, but and in the sense too. I mean, what do people love more in boxing? We love an underdog. We want to see the underdog come back, and we kind of saw that with the zone. Just like with Golden Boy when they had that fallout with PBC, it's like, and all of a sudden, well, obviously we know why people, even if they weren't rooting for Golden Boy, obviously they were rooting against PBC. But we saw Golden Boy make that comeback too, when that Canelo evolved into the sport's biggest star, especially after Floyd Mayweather finally called it a career. So, and Golden Boy, they're back at that point too now, where they lost the biggest star in the sport. So now they have to start all over, and they got to wait for Ryan Garcia. That fight to pan out in January. Oscar's looking for locations that don't exist. He's got the Aztec Mountain, pyramid, somewhere on the Cancun beach.
Hit that up.
I don't, I don't even know where to go with that. But so now we want to see where Golden Boy's coming. They got to kind of repair. I'm not even sure the relationship with the zone is on firm ground. They got a lot of things to work out there as well. And if for whatever reason that falls apart, then they got to search for a new platform. You already got Oscar saying how much he loves ESPN. It's like, all right, is he already kind of plotting his next move already? So
I'm a free agent.
Right.
I'm a free agent. Yep.
Yeah, and he's not, but so I mean, but yeah, it's very interesting to see where the zone goes, where Golden Boy goes, and where Golden Boy and the zone, do they go together into 2021? So me personally, I mean, just because you want to, see the sport succeed, you want to see, all that work out, and we go into just a completely ass kicking, 2021. So, but I do like the fact that the zone has this, nice, strong, end of the year, because they needed it, because everything from the pandemic up to this point has not been very good for the zone. So I really love this December, and then what they have coming up in the first part of 2021. Obviously, Ring City, USA. It's good to see that series start up. The first show seemed like it was better on paper than it was in the ring, although I really love Oshaki Foster's performance. I want to see the next step in his career. So this week they overcame, disaster. Sergey Boacek had tested positive for COVID, so they found a replacement in a hurry. So it's good. And then December 17th card, I think is good. And then I just had a breaking news story today where Amanda Serrano is actually going to be on the card. She's not going to be on the telecast. I think what they're trying to do is work it out where she's going to be. Her fight will be live streamed either before the show or right after. I mean, I can't imagine how early they could put it on
or highlight
in Hollywood. So, well, it's definitely not going to be highlights. I think sometimes what they'll do is like they'll do the main card, and then immediately after they'll be like, like a I don't know what they call it. It's not like a prelim show. It's
I
like
understand.
A show. Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. So Amanda Serrano will be headlining whatever is going to come of that. Yeah. So hopefully, it's going to make a live stream. So she wants to fight. There's Jelena, I'm going to butcher her name, Murdovic. She's a unified featherweight titleist. So as long as both of them win on December 17th, they want to fight each other in the first quarter of 2021. And then Amanda Serrano wants to revisit Sarah Mahfoud to fully. She wants her goal is to become undisputed featherweight champ, give Puerto Rico its first ever truly undisputed champion in the 4-belt era. So I'm glad to see her back in the ring, and a platform that is going to cater to women's boxing because Lou DiBella, he's got more female fighters in the United States than any other promoter, and they're all screaming at him, when am I going to get to fight? So it's good to see they're popping up on Ring City USA. Hopefully the zone gets back in that mix, and everyone just gets back to work.
Yeah, that's basically what it is, and it feels like ever since really August in general, we've hit the ground running, and we've been able to when we talk about get those casual fans involved. Canelo's going to get some. Spence does a little bit of crossover, so I appreciate you stopping in your busy schedule, sir.
No, of course, man. Always a pleasure having me on. Anytime you want me back, just let me know. I'll always be happy to join you.
Yes, sir. All right, take it easy, man. Have a good night.
Thanks so much, Chris. Really appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Jake Donovan, senior writer, and the best there is out there, in my opinion, as far as keeping it, I hate to even say, keeping it real, right? Because that's just played out. But, being neutral, like he even just said. I love it. I definitely love it. It's funny. I totally forgot to even talk about Jacobs and Rosado at the beginning of the damn show. To even talk, I mean, that's how bad it was. Like, talk about getting ready for the next fight. And I saw this clip on Twitter, and I never went behind. I never did the research and rewound show my age, but I never went back to the zone and saw if that was true. But I heard that his coach was like, hey, you didn't bet on this fight, did you? And he's like, no, what are you talking about? But I understand why his trainer asked him that, if that's a true statement. That could have been, how it's doctored nowadays, fake news, yada, yada, yada. I even hate saying that word, actually. But, that's like, dude, what are we in? Danny, what's going on here, dude? Like, that was just a non-performance. And then even when you needed to turn up the heat, it still was a non-performance, like you had it in the bag. Of course, they messed up the Brooklyn, Philadelphia, Brooklyn, Pennsylvania, we might as well call it. That's where the rematch is going to be. I'm going to go ahead and bring in Sean to the fold. He's been on a couple times now. It's always good to hear. He's got a good boxing brain, as they say in the business. What's going on, John? How the hell are you, man?
Hey, Chris. Good to be here. I always look forward to talking boxing with you, and I was just enjoying listening to you and Jake give a rundown of some of the recent events. So I'm ready to chime in and give my take.
Any follow-up that maybe you kind of thought in your head while we're talking that you want to add to that, just randomly?
Yeah, I agree with both you guys about the Spence Garcia undercard this weekend. Disappointing what it looks like going in, especially, for hardcore boxing followers. But I always think that's important because if you're going to try to draw in some casuals, you want to have them entertained by boxing. And I always look at anytime you've got a big fight or a relatively big fight and you don't have a good undercard, you miss that opportunity. This one doesn't look good, but I agree with you and Jake. PBC has kind of been charmed, or maybe it's not charmed. Maybe it's just good matchmaking with what they've got to work with on the undercards, where you look at the Charlo brothers doubleheader. Chris, you and I talked about that on your show before that, and that ended up being a very entertaining card. Really, when you take a top-to-bottom boxing card of the year, it's probably going to be the most entertaining one, arguably at least, and that was a pay-per-view. And then I agreed with Jake's take on the Santa Cruz Davis undercard. Didn't look like it on paper, and it was all knockouts, but the knockouts were of an entertaining variety, and the show moved along. That also ended up being better than expected, and Cowboy Carl always comes to fight, and he went down valiantly, but he provided his usual entertainment. I don't know if we have that on the undercard this week, so I was thinking about that as we, go into the latter parts of 2020 here. As you finished up with, DAZN has made a bit of a comeback when they look like they were about dead with what they've got scheduled before the end of the year. But, Joshua was a legit star in boxing today, but I think, that's a mismatch between him and Pulev. I don't think Pulev has anything for him. Canelo Smith is intriguing. I agree. I like Canelo coming off fighting Kovalev, a light heavy, and scoring a knockout. Even though this is back down at 168, Callum Smith is so big. He's 6'3", and when he's having one of his good nights, he shows he can punch very well as well. So I think that's just another fight that Canelo just turned 30. He's probably going to be heading more, towards light heavyweight if he can continue to compete at the top there. And even though this is at 168, I think this is another good fight to see how he can handle bigger guys for the later stages of his career.
Yeah, that's a good call. And I'll tell you what, I really like. We talked about this, I think, the second to last time you were on here, John. I really like where Canelo sits now. Now that we know the outcome, take this fight on the DAZN platform, make a nice payday. Who knows? Maybe, it's going to be hard to turn down whatever money, $50 million or whatever it's going to be for fucking Golovkin in May, no matter what people think of the actual fight. And then maybe he could move on to Charlo's in some of the PBC stuff. I just like that he's a free agent, and now he can, show where the best, not just money, but just in general. It's kind of nice to have the biggest star, at least over here, like you said, be able to go from platform to platform now.
Yeah, that's really important to me. And for me, it wasn't biased towards any particular platform except for what exposure it gives boxing. I think you look at it like I do like that, Chris. To me, PBC was, and still does overall, it just gives the most potential for exposure to the U.S., where traditionally, even though it's a worldwide sport, the U.S. still drives the money even to this day, and the exposure. It's where you come to make it, whether, some non-Americans like that or not. It's just kind of the way it is. I think it's just the facts. And I think, with a large Mexican-American population and Latino population, and just all types of boxing fans that like Canelo, but we know he's got a Mexican and Mexican-American fan base that's very strong. You look at the huge numbers he does on free Mexican TV, which, of course, Mexico borders the United States. And that's just something I keep looking at as a hardcore follower of boxing. He does in that, I forget the exact numbers, but it's in the 30 million-ish range on Mexican TV. And I think, he's not getting that U.S. exposure, and boxing is really losing. So, for him to not be chained to DAZN, and maybe to have a chance to even get some non-pay-per-view exposure out there for a select fight, or even if it's going to be pay-per-view, at least with better U.S. exposure, I think that's just better for the sport. So I am very happy about the free agent news for that reason. And I think he wouldn't have any reason to really do it unless he was going to ultimately be pointing towards, getting some of that PBC or top rank exposure in their association with ESPN. I've got to figure out that's part of the end game, even if he remains a free agent.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think you hit it on the nose there. From this last weekend, we had a variety of things. Basically, we'll get to the Mike Tyson stuff and Roy Jones stuff a little bit anyway. But Joe Joyce defeated Daniel Dubois with a jab. He held up to some punches. Obviously, a lot of people are, ragging on Dubois for how the fight ended, taking a knee like that. We're always going to hear that. Shit, even people still give crap to Cotto, even though we know there might have been something going on because he was bleeding from all pores that he took a knee. I think it's pretty much prideful that he was taking knees and still hanging in there the way his body felt and his face felt against Margarito. But
he was getting hit with the guy with rocks in his gloves. So
exactly, like to me, that shows more heart than anything. Now that we know what happened, more than likely. But Joe Joyce, he definitely had, I'd say, not necessarily more rounds, but he did have a 12-round fight. He has less fights at the time, but a lot of amateur experience. As we know, he got into the sport a little late, I think 22-ish, but now he's 35, of course, or whatever. So you just didn't know what you were going to get for sure out of him. I did like what I saw in the Jennings fight as far as him moving and jabbing and whatnot, and I thought, hey, he can do some of that. What's your takeaway from the fight, both fighters, and just in general, it did kind of look like the speed level, I don't know if it holds up to the top shelf of the division, but hey, Joe Joyce did submit him.
Yeah, I did pick Joyce for the upset going in after giving it thought for a while as I was looking forward to that fight. I mean, Joyce to me was a 35-year-old guy that looked like a 47-year-old George Foreman fighting out there, in some aspects. He just kind of very, very slow, but, has the good jab that's kind of heavy. And then, just the punches that aren't really sharp, they're more thudding, and sometimes they don't even look that hard, but they just seem to kind of break guys down sometimes. That's what we got out of Joyce. He's a surprisingly, has that agility at that size. I mean, he's just a huge guy, at 6'6", and he's strong enough to really withstand the punches. One thing where I thought he was going to have a good chance in this fight, one of the first things was kind of a small moment that led me to that was when he fought Stavern completely out of shape, but in between the ropes, he came to fight, and he can punch. And Joyce just wasn't defending Stavern's right hand at all, but he was taking it. And it got me thinking that, Dubois is definitely heavy-handed. I was convinced of that going in, but I thought, if this guy can get through the first few rounds, he looks like he takes a good shot, and we know he's got good stamina, especially for his size. He might be able to, wear Dubois down. And that's what did end up happening. Dubois taking the knee, I think there's kind of two ways to look at it. I understand what some people are saying, like, well, his eye was in bad shape, and you don't really want to criticize a guy for not wanting to go on in that situation. I get that, and I'm not saying Dubois doesn't have a fractured orbital bone or nerve damage in his eye, but I do always say this in these situations. If medical, and I'm not saying you would put your medical records out there, they're private, you've got other fights, you may not want fighters to know your vulnerabilities, but when promoters have a cash cow go down, which we know Frank Warren had a lot invested in Dubois, and of course Dubois himself wants to have a career after this and doesn't want the fans down on him, I'm just not going to take their word for it as to what the injuries are. I'm not saying he didn't have a fractured orbital bone and nerve damage in his eye, but I also always in these situations take it as, if I don't see medical records released, I'm not necessarily going to assume that exactly was the injury. I'm not saying it was, I'm not saying it wasn't. Obviously his eye was in bad shape. It's something we see a lot in the sport, and he very well probably couldn't see out of it. So, I'm not saying he necessarily won't be back. What I sensed a little bit as the week went on since the fight, Chris, and I don't know what your thoughts are on it, but as the week went on, I kind of saw a lot of people who were saying Dubois was the guy. In other words, and they want to backtrack on it now, but there was an awful lot of tweeting and social mediaing and writing and interviews where there was a lot of people who follow the sport that Dubois is the guy. He is the young heavyweight. And I think there was a little bit of trying to save face from that, I'm not saying he's done. He's very young for a heavyweight, and I give him credit for taking the fight, and he might very well be back. But I just think there were some people that were trying to save a little bit of face, that they were saying Dubois is the guy. And, it's not being unfair to Dubois. I'm glad he took the fight. He might be back, but you got to call the action as you see it. And it's certainly very far from written in stone that Dubois is the guy of the future. It wasn't necessarily, to me, sold before the Joyce fight, and it's certainly not sold now. I think a guy who you and I, Chris, both agreed might have been losing a little bit of stock, but let's be fair. When you saw Dubois fight this weekend and you saw Tony Yoka, F.A. Ajagba is not looking all that bad right now, as some people who thought Dubois was the guy, want to knock and discount Ajagba, even before he moved from PBC. Now, he hasn't, he didn't look good in that top-rank last fight he had at all, but,
sure.
Look, he fought Desmarian, who was an undefeated guy who fought in the Olympics, and definitely came to fight him. Now, I'm not saying he's as good as Joe Joyce. Joe Joyce was a silver medalist, and Desmarian wasn't, but he definitely came to fight. And Ajagba was agile in that fight. Didn't unravel with a guy that came to fight him, tough for the distance, and won a clear decision. He got up off the canvas against Kalaje. Again, Kalaje's not Joyce, but these are some things where I kind of didn't like to see Ajagba make that move from PBC and get off of Ronnie Shields as trainer, because I thought they were doing a good job of building him up in the ring and exposure-wise. But Top Rank's got a lot of heavyweights, and they've got an ESPN deal, so I would just say don't put Ajagba on the scrap heap after what I saw this weekend.
That is a perfect way to put it. That is a very good point, and I didn't even think about that, but now that you mention it, yeah. I mean, if we're going to sit there and do that to F.A., then we better be doing it to both these guys, win or lose on this one, because there are some things where you're like, man, the speed of both these guys, the way they wide punch, there's certain things they open up defensively, yada, yada, yada. But that is a good point. That is a very good point, and obviously they're probably going to go full steam ahead with Joyce, because why not, just based off the age. Speaking of age, Daniel Jacobs might be showing some of it against Gabe. Talk about a non-performance, John. I mean, Jacobs is an inconsistent fighter. There's plenty of fighters that fight at the level of their opponent. That's been around for a long time. We know that. But, I mean, even after the fight in the interview, it was like he already knew, well, I'm already moved on. We're good. I'm going to give the fans next time. It's like, and he got hit a lot by Chavez in the last fight. Was just this, I mean, it kind of was a cash out in a sense because of the contract after the Canelo fight, and he got a nice chunk of change for this one. He was calling him a sparring partner before. Gabe, he was saying that, and it's like, well, dude, this was a sparring match. I don't know what's maybe the Golovkins and the Derevyanchenko's and the Canelo fights has taken something out of him, and he just can't, the spark plug doesn't spark up as quick or whatever. But what do you think of that? Because that was a horrendous fight. In the interview after, and even the corner, who I know is somewhat new or whatever, but he's even like, hey, Daniel, what's going on?
Yeah, terrible fight, terrible card overall. I think with Jacobs, it's probably a combination now. He started to, when you started to, as his career went on, you started to see how good he could legitimately punch. I think he saw that and became even more enamored with that himself, and his punch rate had been dropping in fights. He knocked Soljecki down at the end. He scored a knockdown of Derevyanchenko. Those were pretty key for him in those fights. And that and his punch rate has just been dropping, basically. And it just got to the point where against Rosado, it was shriveling up, and it's why he didn't do more with Chavez. And you're right. Then I think we're getting now on top of that also to being in some tough fights with some tough guys. I mean, he has been in with Canelo and Golovkin and Derevyanchenko. I mean, that's a pretty tough trio to be in with there. And he did get knocked out by Pirog years back, and of course he had the he had the cancer and the treatments and the surgery. I think it's probably a combination. His punch rate has been too low for a while and dropping, and I think you're getting the age and a little bit of wear and tear on top of it. And I think that combo is what you saw Saturday night against Rosado, where he just wasn't doing anything. And, Rosado was cognizant of Jacob's power, so he wasn't going to turn it into a war, even though he didn't box that bad. I mean, it was a terrible fight. As bad as the fight was, I think people were talking about it as the worst. We've seen worse, but it was a bad fight. It was a really bad undercard. The fight with Tago and Menard wasn't bad, but Tago's not that good. I mean, I think you just got to say that. The bottom half of the lightweight division is not that strong if you don't count for guys at 130 that might be moving up.
Quick.
And, so technically when you're ranking a 130 and a 135, that's why I hate the too many weight classes. But, then you get guys like Tago in the back end, and you look at him, he turned pro late. He doesn't have pop, mediocre boxer. Menard was getting really poor advice in his corner. I don't know if you got to catch that fight, Chris, but giving him bizarre, inconsistent instructions. And the reason you mention it is because he was trying to listen. So, in other words, a lot of fighters ignore their corners, even with experienced quartermen. You can tell, especially the most experienced fighters or some of the guys at the top. But Menard seemed like he was actually trying to follow instructions, and the instructions were really bad. It looked like he could have just backed Tago up, and Menard does hit hard. He's got fast hands and he hit hard. He doesn't have a good hit. He's inaccurate, but he was having a lot of success when he was backing him up, and then his corner would say, I just want you boxing him and just sticking the jab out, and then, he would lose some rounds, and it ended up, one judge had it a draw, which people said was an outrage. I didn't have it a draw, but I did think it was a pretty close fight, and it just told me that Tago is going to be cannon fodder for somebody as an opponent at 130, 135. I always like to put the warning signals out for that, not to be picking on him, but just because, when some match gets announced and you're not familiar with him, and he's going to be fighting Ryan Garcia or something like that.
Right.
Pencil it in for the quick KO. That's what I'm going to tell you months in advance.
Yeah, I did catch that fight, but I didn't catch what you said. I'm glad that you summed that up. I barely had him winning, though, in the fight. And, yeah, I think you hit it on the nose as far as the drop-off after the top guys. And, sometimes that's what it is. That's why we need these guys to kind of play round robin over the next couple of years. Hopefully, to transition, we don't get so many round robins in this category. But, it is what it is. Mike Tyson, Roy Jones Jr., the 8-round, 2-minute exhibition. They didn't embarrass themselves. They didn't get hurt. So I was very glad to see that. The look and production value, like we've discussed, it was on point there. Some people can take Snoop Dogg or leave him, but I digress to, well, hold on now. If you're going to rip Snoop, like I said earlier, then you just bought a pay-per-view with two 50-year-olds. And don't give me anything about the robbery because you knew there wasn't going to be an official scorecard. It's funny. But
I know that didn't make sense to me. It's an exhibition.
Right.
It's an exhibition without an official scorecard, and people wanted to pretend it was a real fight anyway. It showed you how open people were to delusion.
Yeah, and it seems like in our country we're more and more open to delusion on a whole different level that we're not going to discuss here, but you know what I'm saying.
Yep.
So Holyfield trilogy's next. I mean, like I said, they didn't embarrass themselves. The left hook to the body was there. He couldn't follow up. He actually tried to rush him in the start. He tripped over himself. I'm glad he didn't fall, but that was kind of funny. But overall, he even admitted, Tyson and Roy especially, but he even said, I'm glad that was a 2-minute round because you could hear them both breathing heavy, especially Roy. And then back to the whole, well, Roy just held all the time. It's well, didn't Holyfield do that a lot? Punch him and hold. That's how you beat Tyson. And plus, like you said, I mean, it's an exhibition, guys. So, just glad that nobody got hurt and they didn't look embarrassing. What did you think overall, the actual, everything, the production, the fight, and then we're going to see the Holyfield trilogy. It's coming.
Just for full disclosure, it wasn't an event that I was really knocking. I don't get to the. Sometimes I do on certain things. On this one, I didn't get to like the boxing moralizing, where I wasn't faulting anybody who felt like they wanted to buy it. But for me personally, as much history as I have watching Tyson Jones from the time they were amateurs, when it was going to be an exhibition. Not that I want anybody getting seriously injured, but again, you're asking for $50 for an exhibition. I didn't find the value there for me was there, so I was kind of down on it in that sense. I'm not down on the Snoop Dogg thing or Jake Paul or making it entertaining. I think all those things are good for boxing when they draw eyeballs. I mean, I know, my son, he was talking about it. My young nieces were talking about it because they know who the Pauls are. But, I mean, this is the stuff we're talking about. I mean, boxing needs this kind of exposure. So I'm with you. I mean, production value was good. And hey, what the heck, throw on some classic rappers from some entertainment, things like that. I don't have a problem with that either. So as an event, I'm happy. Like you said, nobody got hurt and the buys were high. It seemed to actually, what was also bizarre in a good way about it was it seemed to reach all age demographics. You had these younger kids that were curious and knew Jake Paul from social media. And then you had, of course, people who grew up with Jones and Tyson and wanted to do the nostalgia thing and didn't really care. And people who maybe of ages in between that who were just curious about the Tyson myth, who didn't get to see him in his heyday and got drawn to it for that. So, anything that draws eyes to boxing, I'm in favor of. So I think all that's all good. I'm not myself looking for exhibition headliners down the road. It's not something that I'm interested in.
And the charge, that's where I do have that's the only thing I'm with you on the charge. Charge for exhibition, I'm not a big fan of.
Right, that's the part I personally had trouble getting over that hurdle. Everything else seemed to work out pretty good, but the 50 for the exhibition headliner was something that I had a little trouble getting over. But maybe if they're creative with who else is on these cards with them, and they come up with a formula or something, I don't know. Maybe in that sense, maybe it works a little bit. But I'd like to see the exhibition headliner part kind of go away, and maybe we go to something like Spence Garcia, and instead of a weak undercard, maybe we have something like this undercard, and maybe you have the Legends exhibition on the undercard or something like that. Maybe that combo is something that down the road. And I actually mean with rappers and with Snoop Dogg on color commentary, things like that. Making it a whole entertainment spectacle. I'm good with that. Boxing's always had a lot of the theater of the absurd, and it's not the NFL in a good way. I mean, I don't like how you don't have one champion in 8 or 9 weight classes, but outside of that, some of the chaos can be entertaining at times.
Right, and we're talking boxing, for Christ's sakes. You know what I mean? Like, come on.
Right.
Yeah, like how high are we going to hold up our nose in the air, John? You know what I mean? Like, come on.
What I like to remind old timers is, remember, even Pete Rademacher came right out of the Olympics and fought Floyd Patterson for the world title in the 50s. I mean, crazy stuff in boxing is not new.
Exactly. All right. Spence and Garcia. What are your thoughts here in general? Just, of course, of the fight. We talked about the event a little bit as well. It's nice if it's safe because it's such a big stadium. Usually that's pretty safe as far as COVID related. There was a difference in Canelo's fight. It's going to be in the Alamo Dome where Gervonta and Leo was. And when that crowd got going, even though it was 9 or 11,000, whatever the hell it was, whatever they let in, it did feel good to hear that, so that's a nice little bonus. But what are your thoughts just in general? A lot of the whole thing with Spence is he okay from, is his face going to hold up type thing? What are your thoughts on this fight in general?
Well, I think I've got to put it this way. I really don't remember, at least for a long time, where I have a pick where I hope I'm wrong, but I think this is going to be that fight, because I got to preface it with, before Spence's accident, he was going to fight Garcia, and I actually, for a long time, have had Spence pretty much at the top in boxing, or competing for the top. Some people had him just a little bit below that when you're talking about maybe the mythical 10 best, but I had him near the top. Pre-accident, him going in fighting Danny Garcia, even though Danny Garcia is a very good, solid fighter, he has problems not being aggressive enough at times, and that's kind of been his Achilles heel. I would have clear decision. But I have to go circumstantially. It goes to an issue talked about earlier, really, with Dubois. And he doesn't have to. Spence is not going to release those medical records from the accident. There's promotional things involved, marketing, his future. This is his living. This is how he makes money. So I don't think it's out of line when you're commentating on the sport. You've got to look at the circumstances of his accident. We saw the car, He then later acknowledged, there were reports, and then he later acknowledged, he had a long loss of consciousness. So, that means head injury. You don't have long loss of consciousness without head injury, and he is a professional boxer. So, they said he's in the gym. Now you get reports he's looking fine. Physically he looks in shape. But I'm going to have to go on the circumstantial evidence, and I'm going to have to just say, again, I hope I am wrong, but on the circumstantial evidence I see, I'm going to have to say I don't think he's going to be ready for a Danny Garcia. I think they're probably caught in between where, remember, this is where he's got to make his lifetime earnings for the rest of his life. And
sure, they
might have just made a call. Danny Garcia is the biggest payday where we think we might be able to beat the guy. This is what might be behind the scenes. And, they're not sure, but, the payday can be justified. And then if it doesn't go well, he's going to have at least a very good payday, as opposed to if something doesn't go well for a very low-profile fight. I think that's what people aren't looking at.
Right.
So what I'm getting to is what I see here, and it's based primarily on Spence having been in the accident, because it would not be my pick before the accident. I see a scenario here where Spence is just not the same Spence, is not going to have the same punch resistance, and Garcia will probably start out as his normal tentative self, but then a few rounds will go by and he'll see I'm not in with a guy who's the same threat, and it will probably encourage him to let his hands go more. And Garcia does have good, solid power, especially in the left hook, and I think he's going to open up, and I think he may be able to get Spence out of there based on these circumstances. I hope I'm wrong. I just have to clarify it. If this would have been pre-accident, I would have been clearly picking Errol Spence by a decision or a late stoppage and putting him near the top of the boxing. But I feel like I can't ignore it. I've got to go on what I see, what the circumstances are, and we're just barely over a year since that accident. I just think Danny Garcia is going to be a little bit too good of a guy for this situation, and he'll start out his usual cautious self, but I think he's going to figure out he's not in there with the same guy and open up on Spence, and it's going to be trouble for Spence. If I'm wrong, I'll be happy to be wrong on this one. I'll look at Spence, and if he looks like he did pre-accident, I'll put him right up there where I had him before accident. But that's just the way I've got to look at it right now.
Well, and just to piggyback off that, you make a great point. First of all, we really don't even know what's up with the other stuff surrounding the accident, right? And blood level, alcohol, and all that. We haven't got it finalized on that. You're right about all we have is a pitcher, and the pitcher sure didn't look good. And then his quotes, he's an honest guy. Relatively speaking, we don't know him personally, but as far as this goes, he was in the hospital. You don't stay in the hospital for that long because you're okay, right?
Right.
And then he even talked about, of course you're going to have a soreness, and the internal stuff. Yeah, maybe you didn't break a bone. We don't know, like you said, but internal stuff is even more important because the other stuff can heal. And to sit there, and when he started shaking it off a little bit, getting some rust off, and he's doing mitts, John, he admitted that he's still sore. This is 3-4 months after the accident. I mean, forget the face, maybe the body shots too. I mean,
you
is
don't even know about the
alarming
body, but I'm thinking about the brain. I'm thinking about if he had loss of consciousness, that by definition has got to be a brain injury. I mean, you get knocked out, that's a brain injury by definition. A lot of people don't realize that. I mean, a neurologist defines that as a brain injury, even though that's the sport of boxing. You know, we love the sport, but it is a brutal, dangerous sport at the same time. It just can't be denied. So, you know, it wasn't in a fight, but that mechanism has been there now for, you know, Errol Spence, and it wasn't because of his abilities as a fighter. It was because of a car accident, but it was still there. And, you know, the brain just affects everything, as we know. Not only, you know, his vulnerabilities to possibly being knocked out easier, but also it can affect all kinds of other motor skills and speech, and it just affects, it can affect everything you do depending on what part of the brain took the damage. So, you know, obviously he's fighting and you know, he feels he can get back in the ring and he's got people with him, but I just think Danny Garcia might be just on a level where it's going to be too much at this point. And like I said, I actually hope I'm wrong, but that's the way I got to see it right now.
I mean, you make a lot of good points. You're not like overdoing it, like, oh, dude, his face is just going to be bloody and he won't be able to finish. That's not the angle you're taking, and I like that you're looking that in depth to it, and you have to. Like I said, it's just weird to be sore after 4 months, isn't it? I mean, that's not normal. 4 months.
It is.
When you
you know what's weird, because
you're not getting punched. You know.
Yep. And I'm not even saying it because of what the backgrounds of the fighters are. Like, you know, Danny Garcia is Puerto Rican, Hector Camacho was Puerto Rican, and you know, Sugar Ray Leonard was a Black American. Errol Spence is Black, and they were all welterweights when they were good. I'm not looking at necessarily that, but and Errol Spence is not old, but something reminds me, and he hasn't had a long layoff, but something's reminding me of like the Sugar Ray Leonard Hector Camacho fight. Like I could just see like, you know how like Camacho was in there, he wasn't a puncher, and they were fighting that like, you know, middleweight of all things, and but you know, it's like he went through a few rounds, and Leonard just it wasn't the same guy. There was nothing there.
No.
And then he just figured out after a few rounds, even though Camacho is not a big puncher, especially at that weight, you know, hey, I'm not really in with anything here, and he opened up on Sugar Ray Leonard, and the fight was over. And he was, you know, in that sense shocking because Hector Camacho had taken him out, not only just beating him, but taking him out, you know, embarrassing him at that stage. And, of course, that was the last fight of Leonard's career. It's not, you know, and he wasn't coming off a car accident or anything like that, and he was retired. Spence hasn't been retired, but it's just something that popped into my mind. It just the playing out of the fight, it reminded me that it could maybe be something a little bit along those lines.
Yeah, I remember dipping in and out of that fight, I believe on the replay on Tuesday Night Fights. It was on the replay on Tuesday Night Fights, right? Not the live.
Right, yeah, it was pay-per-view. It was pay-per-view originally.
Right.
I got suckered. My dad and I, we were
wrangled in.
That weekend. I remember we bought into that one, you know, just said, what the heck, let's see what's going on here. So Tyson Jones fans don't feel bad. Don't feel
Yeah, exactly.
Bad.
And I had a legit excuse, otherwise I would have got wrangled in. But I remember at my girlfriend's house at the time, dipping in between rounds and like, oh, I can't watch this. No, I can't watch anymore. Oh, no, I can't watch it. And I kept flipping back, and it's like, no, I just won't watch this anymore. I can't do it because I was such a big Sugar Ray Leonard fan, as we all were. Anything else you'd like to discuss, sir, that's on your mind or whatever, just in general?
Well, I'd like to – one thing that's been on my mind lately that's actually kind of good for Top Rank is Top Rank, as you and Jake were saying, I agreed. When the fighters were coming back from the pandemic, they got off to a real slow start, but then as we got into the fall, they had a good run, and of course they co-promote with Warren now in the U.S. part, getting the shows on the ESPN Plus, and the Joyce Dubois is in ESPN Plus. They've had a good run in the fall, and I'm always enamored with the idea that they can get that ESPN exposure, and who knows if things went really well, there could even be some ABC involvement someday. It gets kicked around once in a while, but hasn't been utilized yet. But what I'm getting to is they've got all these heavyweights signed, and they've got the co-promotional deal with Warren, who's got Fury and Dubois and Joyce, and now they've got a Jogba, and then they've got lesser guys like Takam and Pulev, who I think Joshua is going to take care of, and that'll be the end of him. But they do have him. They got Anderson coming up. They've been collecting heavyweights, but they're not facing these guys off with each other. Except we had Joyce Dubois, on ESPN Plus Saturday, which that was a great matchup and a very entertaining fight. Was really happy to see that. But we need them to, let's put the heavyweight center stage and start matching some of these guys up in some good fights. Like, it was going to be Fury Caballel, and we don't need fights like that. Let's have some ESPN exposure. Like, I've said a Jogba maybe needs to get himself back up on the radar screen again a little more, and let's do some things like that. Have them be ESPN headliners, not on undercards, frankly, to smaller guys. Let's put them back front and center and see if the fans respond to that. I would like to see that. Heck, you even had a guy like Kingsley EBay, the pandemic star, pulling those upsets and surprise performances. The guy improved. I mean, again, let's have some shows with these guys and some good matchups, and get them on regular ESPN where people see them. I'd like to see that. I think PBC, if they can get some of their better fights back onto regular Fox, I'd like to see some of that. We've got the PPVs, but we've got to get back to a couple of these better fights with some better exposure on Fox. I'd like to see that, or even on regular Showtime if they're not going to get them on Fox. And then mix that in a little bit with the pay-per-views. We are in a pandemic situation, but they've run 3 pay-per-views over the last few months, and you'd like to be optimistic about it, but I just don't know if that's boxing at that price level. That I know that some people say, well, UFC does it, but I don't think UFC does all that great on a lot of those pay-per-views, and they've got that exclusive ESPN Plus deal, so ESPN Plus is happy with some of that because there's no distributor there.
Right. Yeah, it's a good call, and especially the way it lined up. It's one thing to do 4 a year, and they're all spread out. You can really build the card or whatever, but to go back to back to back, the first 3 out of 4 Fox cards were good, but the last 3 out of 4 were definitely not that. Thanks, as always, for coming on, John. Why don't you let the people know a great follow on Twitter for a variety of stuff, including picking a fighter to win or lose, whatever it is. Why don't you tell them how you can be followed there on Twitter, sir?
Oh, thanks. I'm John Einreinhofer, Real John E. Law on Twitter. Be happy to have you follow me on there. And thanks, Chris, for the shout-out. I love to tweet about all things boxing, law, a lot of other things, but we'll give you plenty of boxing content and opinions on there. So always happy to have the followers and get to engage on Twitter with people about boxing.
Exactly. Thanks again, man. You have a good night and enjoy the fights this weekend.
All right, Chris. Thanks for having me as always.
All right, buddy. Take it easy.
All right. Take care.
Yes, sir. All righty. Talk about boxing brains on the show. Back to back. Jake and Sean. We're just going to start calling it the Jake and Sean show, maybe. What do you think about that? We do have an ESPN Plus card tomorrow. Shoot, I forgot. Jazza Dickens and Ryan Walsh. That's part of that golden contract thing. So keep an eye out for that. DAZN has their card, as Jake mentioned earlier in the show, on a Friday. Billy Joe Saunders and Martin Murray, among others, on DAZN. The night before, I almost skipped by it, NBC Sports Network, that Ring USA, Brandon Adams. There is a replacement there. But I'm with Jake on their next card too. That kind of feels like a showbox card. And of course the Errol Spence, Danny Garcia, which I'm going to talk about a little bit. I am looking forward to Sebastian Fundora against Jorge Cota, where he is, in his career anyway. Not to call it the co-feature. That's just awesome. This is the one I think that it's kind of pretty easy to see it's going to turn out to be a barn burner. But they really need this one to be a barn burner. Jose Cito Lopez and Francisco Santana. I mean, Santana, that's a 10-rounder too. They really need that to pop. If they can get that to pop, because I think Fundora and Cota will pop, if they can get that one to pop, we may feel a little bit better about this undercard, but we'll see. As Jake talked about, Miguel Flores filled in for Ramirez. I would have liked to seen Ceja there too. That's probably the best where you're at in level, no matter what the WBA says. I like that. That was going to be a good matchup. Flores is a game dude, but we'll see. Vito Melnecki is on the undercard as well. I think that's on the, I want to say FS2. I don't think it's FS1 because there's college football. But then again, it's Tuesday, and there's about anywhere from 13 to 15 games a week that get postponed or canceled. So you never know. Maybe it'll switch to FS1. And that about wraps up the weekend for that kind of stuff. My thoughts on Spence and Garcia, it is a wait and see. He may look in great shape. He may be focused more than he was, kind of throwback for the first couple of years of his title run and all that. That's like a normal thing, especially when you actually, not just the money, of course the money plays into that, right? But also his popularity was gaining, right? A lot of folks know Spence. He had a huge show with him and Mikey Garcia last year. A lot of hype around this guy. And so I can see he's focused and all that. I'm glad he's okay, relatively speaking. But, Sean made a lot of good points. Some of the points I was going to make may be not that detailed, though. That is a good point. And I was going to bring up, it always did, strike me as odd that he was sore, like his body was sore while he's training, not like you're training and then the next day you wake up and go, oh, I'm a little stiff, and then the next day you're like, oh, God. Like if you haven't worked out in a while, weightlift, whatever, use muscles you don't use, that's different, right? But he was literally having issues, with soreness, like, I don't know. The internal stuff, you just don't know. It may not turn out to be just the cuts. Maybe that part will be okay. But maybe that concussion, which has had to be a major concussion if he doesn't remember any of it. I mean, I've had, a few concussions myself, mostly in wrestling, and I remember a lot of it. You know what I mean? Like now that I can shape it all back and see it, and of course I saw one of them on film too, to pick me up and drop me right on the top of my head. But anyway, back then we didn't have a protocol. I had another match later that night, which wasn't maybe the safest thing, but we'll see. I do think I'm gonna go off. Spence is gonna be okay enough to get the 9-3. Maybe 8-4, but I'm looking 9-3, 8-4-ish. I don't think he's going to do the Sean Porter fight. I think he's going to use, he'll fight more at a measured pace. I don't think he's going to go in there bang right away. Once he's affected by a punch, Danny, I think then maybe you'll see him turn up the heat like that. But I think we'll see a measured approach much earlier. We saw I'm not going to say a measured approach, but we saw some adjustments out of Spence in the last part of the Porter fight when he did little step backs and catch him and ultimately scored the knockdown that clearly got him that victory. But, I think I'm not saying it's going to be Mikey Garcia style for the first 6 rounds or something, but he's got some reach on him. He'll take his time because he knows, well, how does, Matisse had plenty of success. Remember, he hit him with that punch that knocked out Danny's mouth guard, and launched off the top row. And we know what Khan was doing real early. I mean, he won the fight. He's, that left hook, the no look left hook, but he was getting touched up, and that's putting it lightly. So I do think that he won't come in at him just, I'm coming to hunt you down. I think he'll use jab. I think he'll not be on the move by any stretch of the imagination. Although Danny can't really cut off the ring, so that's not that bad of a strategy. Like a Porter, he mixed it up really well. But I do think that Spence, whether it looks mediocre, whether it looks great in spots, kind of the great, good, bad, and ugly, could come out in this fight. I'm banking that he's okay, but that's part of the intrigue in this fight. But, yeah, I think we'll see a measured approach. So I'm going to go by decision. I don't think he'll knock him out. If he knocks him out, he comes back and looks great and knocks Danny Garcia out, that would be something, because you could say whatever you want about Danny. His resume at 40 and 47 is very good. In the way he got brought up, I mean, he fought a bunch of solid. Thing is, there'll be 2 or 3 fights in a row where you're like, okay, dude, you already got that. Don't do a second one. You already got that. Stay busy. I can understand that. It's been a bit weird, but as a prospect, his first major fight, he was a 3-4 to 1 underdog, something like that. So, and then same with Batiste too. So I respect Danny a fair amount. I really do. I mean, beyond just respecting all fighters, of course, for what their form of entertainment, what's given to us, and the risk that they're taking. But it's just how hard it is. But I also actually respect him a lot more, I believe, than some other folks. It's just so easy to call him a cherry picker. Most of that's just social media stuff. But when you look at his resume, win, loser, well, he hasn't had a draw. Come on, dude. Like, it's just been out of order, I guess you could say. That's fine. But, dude's, whatever. Anyway, so that's my pick there. I do think Spence will win. I think on the undercard, I like Jose Cito Lopez to win, but I think it'll be a great fight. They're not great. Action-packed. And also, I do think Fundora will catch him with a big punch. And Fundora, he's rarely in a bad fight. But yeah, I think that's a good fight. But we'll see if that undercard, like we've mentioned a couple of times, lives up to it. A little bit more on that Jacobs Rosado. I mean, I had it basically a draw. To be honest, I mean, it could have went 7-5 to Gabe. Could have went 6-5-1, either one of them, I guess, in my opinion. It just, even when Jacobs would land a right hand, there'd be no follow-up hook, no, I don't know. It was just like he was in, I thought in a boring fight, I thought, they did a pretty good job. With it, Grisham, I gave him a couple shots out because I thought he had some good lines too. But I thought he was the one that was like, but this side is really like, what's going on, But this one was bad, dude. I mean, looking at, they both landed right around 78 punches. Gabe was, Rosado was busier, 549 to 339. Jacobs had really the body punching was better, 34 to 15. And then they, from Philadelphia, Brooklyn, New York, is like, whoa, what happened? I already wrote it down. Like, okay, got it, okay. Oh, and they're all 115, 113. So at least the scorecards were in range. I don't think it was a robbery per se, but if you said Gabe won the fight, I can't stand up and put some big argument into it. And then just after, like I mentioned, it's like, dog, like, there's just no spirit there. I don't know what it was. I don't know. I'm a little confused. I got to admit, I'm a little confused. But he was doing just enough to win the rounds, but he just wasn't doing much. It was weird, and like I said, the interview after, it was like he barely was tired then. You're like, well, dude, like, I'm not saying go berserk, but you needed to win some of those rounds clearly, man. But, you know, he ended up getting the dub. So it is what it is. We'll see. I believe he's a free agent now. Sometimes on those 3-fight deals or whatever, you do have an option that may be. But as far as we know, I believe he is a free agent. We'll see. He has options, whether it's at DAZN or the PBC. I'm at 168, so we'll see where that goes. That Nikita Abala, how do you say his name? Abalabe? He looked pretty mediocre, to be honest with you, against Maddox. He looked pretty sloppy, very sloppy at some times. But, you know, he did what he had to do to an extent. Anyway, he was definitely winning the better shots. He was definitely working the body. But, you know, it was really just one punch at a time. And then that Yelavusanov, I think he looked very sharp. Cossack Thunder, that dude, he looked sharp to me. That second round TKO, I think it was a short left hand against Ndongo. Now he's 10-0 with 6 knockouts, I believe. So he looks sharp, though. I want to see more. I want to see more of both, but that Cossack Thunder, I thought he looked a little bit better than oh boy. But I think that's about it when it comes to that. Anybody on that wants to, and you could just listen, okay? When I say this, sometimes I say it and I see people hang up. You can listen. I'm not going to go to you, okay? But if you want to press one, you want to join in, that's cool. You can do that. And then 503, you just let me know if you're going to interject tonight, or maybe you're not going to, you're busy at work or whatever the case is. Just let me know. I actually just texted you right now. Okay. There is a variety of news items that we will be getting to. We'll start with Oscar De La Hoya. Just to clean up the Tyson Roy Jones stuff, they're saying it did over 1 million pay-per-views. That doesn't surprise me. I mean, Tyson's name brand, the way they influence, like, I don't know how much they spent on not just the musical acts, not just Snoop, but the amount of influencers online. That's probably costly, but, you know, even if not, you know, I mean, even if they broke even, the whole point was their app. People kind of forget about that. The rest is just gravy. But the app, it got out there front and center. And but yeah, I really think the Holyfield trilogy is next. Oscar, though, you know, I'm glad that he's training, and maybe that's motivating him. Maybe that's doing a variety of stuff. You know what I mean? So I can see the positive there. Him wanting to fight, well, you know, it is what it is, right? But this is from Dan Raphael on Boxingscene.com. He wants to fight Golovkin. And it even says, seriously. Like, Dan even, like, preferenced that in the title, or whoever actually made the title, probably the editor, I don't know. But these are some of the quotes here, folks. You know how easy GGG would be for me? Oh, my gosh. It would be a high-profile fight, that's for sure. But, you know, he's older, too, he said. You know, I'm old, but he's older, too. I mean, look what Manny Pacquiao just did. He's older. I've always took a good shot, and I've always took apart fighters like him. In my mind, it would be that easy. I would definitely consider it, that's for sure. Right now I came down to 170, so I'm not sure if I'll make 154. I'm sure I can make 160 comfortably. We've, you know, heard about Maidana. We've heard about Martinez. He just we've heard Argentina, I guess, right? But it even Cortez, dude, Ike Cortez was like, all right, Ike wants him. I heard, I wasn't really interested in that. That's what De La Hoya said, but it got my attention. Ike's over there like, nah, dude, I'll fight you, dude. We still got some finished business. But then he also said, I really want to kind of look at Tyson. That's one of the factors to see if Tyson looked good or whatever, and variety and all that. But and then he goes on to say, and Jake and I were talking about this as well, the broadcast platform. His Golden Boy Promotions has a lucrative output deal with DAZN, or at least we think it is. We don't know the rework deal now. But he has no contractual ties to the broadcaster. I mean, beyond his, lucrative deal, quote unquote, with Golden Boy, I'm a free agent, baby. That's what he said. It's obviously an open market for me, and it's a whole different negotiation for me, but whatever works best for me, whether it's ESPN or DAZN, which is kind of interesting to kind of randomly say. It also kind of lends itself for one to believe that reworked deal is not, well, obviously it's reworked, but is it they had a 5-year deal with, I guess you could say, 3 years on it, give or take, now. So do they still have a 3-year deal? Because if they still had a 3-year deal, don't you think you'd be tied then to DAZN? And once you want to up that platform, since you just lost Canelo in your stable anyway, DAZN still has him, might have him for the next fight too. But I say still has him, but he's on the platform right now for this fight, and could be for Triple G. But I mean, he's talking about Triple G. Like, I'll take on forget Canelo. I'll take on the Triple G. And then what do you do there? I never even thought about it. Is Canelo, because remember Canelo and Oscar was a potential marquee fight that they were looking at. DAZN. I think that was on paper. I'm not sure, but we know those marquee names, those opponents that they were talking about, McGregor and whatnot, Khabib and stuff like that. But Oscar and Canelo was a fight that at least, I don't know if it was discussed, but you know what I'm saying. But wonder if Oscar says, F this, I'm going to fight Golovkin in May. But I thought pay-per-view was dead. Are you going to, which one is it? You going to ESPN? We know he's not going to PBC. You going to ESPN or going to DAZN? It's kind of funky there. Kind of whatever. But no, I don't think it's an easy fight. I know Golovkin's older or whatever, maybe shop-worn, I don't know. We can call him shop-worn because of the Derevyanchenko fight. That's cool. Look at the way he finished that Canelo fight the second time. He finished pretty damn strong. Is he done? I don't know. But Oscar against Golovkin, when you can bring Oscar, or you can put him on all these different shows in the spring, in the lead-up, you really could. Whereas Canelo you can bring everywhere, but still, Oscar, I'd say, actually still has a bigger name. I mean, I think that's fair. And we know the English-speaking thing. Oscar can come out there and be like, hey, did you just see Tyson? I'm younger than him, So, I don't know. But here's some funny stuff that Jake and I were talking about as well. This is from Dan on Boxingscene.com as well. De La Hoya plans to stage Garcia Campbell on Cancun Beach or near Aztec pyramids. He hasn't announced, he says, he's in the quotes, I haven't announced the location, but starting the new year, obviously things are different now, and we've got to think about and promote the non-traditional way because we don't have the fans. Maybe you can have 20% in Texas, and maybe that's where they'll end up. I'm guessing that's it. But maybe not, And he said, Ryan Garcia, we gotta think outside the box. And he's talking about in Cancun or the backdrop to Aztec pyramids and all sorts of stuff like that. I like the idea of mixing it up, Don't get me wrong. I mean, I really do. Now, like when you say near the Aztec pyramids, they're underground Mexico City. He must be talking about the Mayans, but that's okay. That's okay. I actually saw someone tweet that. I was like, that's a good point. That's a very good point. So yeah, January 2nd though, we do have a date for Ryan Garcia's first full-on step up, which I really like that fight. And that is a good way for DAZN to start the new year off in boxing fans. Usually they don't have that close, maybe that first week. Sometimes not even that first week. I think we got, I don't think that was the first week. I was trying to think, did we get that Caleb Plant Uzgadaji fight in the first week? I think that was the second week. I can't remember. But usually we don't get that first week per se. Maybe, when it was Friday Night Fights or something we did. But otherwise, I like that. January 2nd, boom, right there. That's pretty dope. That would be pretty dope. And we'll see where it ends up. He's talking about Mexico. Who knows? Who knows where it'll be? Let's see. But the whole Golovkin thing, I don't know about that one. You know what I mean? That seems, I know he's a little past it. Don't get me wrong. I realize that. But I don't know, man. I just don't know. But what I do know is the casuals came out for Tyson and Roy Jones. Like I said earlier, I did get some heat in the DM. It went down in my DMs. Even people texted me that, haven't called in the show in years. They were like, oh, dude, you're a hater, this, that, and the other. But, I told them I wasn't going to pay for it. You can go to YouTube right now and watch the whole fight. I haven't even seen Daily Motion. I was honest about it. I was also just, like I said, how can I be a hater for just reading the rules of the fight per commission? And the promoters were misleading down the stretch. That's just a fact, dude. So I didn't say, I had a segment on it. It was in the title. It's in the title as far as the Holyfield this week. I'm covering it. I talked about it almost the first thing, right, today. So I don't think that's hate. I really don't. But my biggest thing was always, if you're going to pay for this, cool. But I was really talking more media and part-time media. And hardcore fans on Twitter know a lot about the sport, history, watch it all the time, into it, but then buy this, but then dump on saying that's not pay-per-view worthy. Everybody has an entertainment value dollar to it. But that if it goes over $1 million or 1.5 or 1.2, whatever it is, that kind of blows that whole, why are they having, that's the thing that got to me about the media. Why are they charging pay-per-view in a pandemic? That's what they're telling the PBC. So, okay, well, it worked out pretty good when you have a name brand, so it is what it is. But yeah, I don't really think that I was hating on it by calling it an exhibition, because Mike literally said it. He followed up on, it's an exhibition after he said fight. But speaking of casual fans in the media and all that, this is what a well-known, fairly, I'd say, pretty well-known over the years, gentleman in the sports world had to say.
I don't care if you agree with this or not, but Mike Tyson, 54, proved me wrong. I think he could, if given the opportunity, be heavyweight champ of the world still.
And that's what people don't like that are following the sport. And like Jake Paul, if he came out and said, I'm the next Mayweather, or I'm going to take out or whatever, just hear it, listen up.
I saw George Foreman do it. He was in worse shape than Tyson. And George Foreman didn't hit me harder than Mike Tyson. And the heavyweight.
I don't know about that.
It was better when Foreman was around than it is now. Can you name 3 heavyweights?
I can.
Tyson was clearly instructed against Roy Jones Jr. Don't hit above the shoulders. He could have ended that thing 4 punches in. Mike Tyson, I watched him and I thought, he's in great shape. If you gave Mike Tyson another 6 months and fought Tyson Fury, put him in there. But
the thing is, 12 rounds, 3 minutes in a full camp, not this chunks of camp. He even said, we all know guys in their prime talk about the torture they put their body through. How many more times can he go to the well, though? And also, the well of a 12-round, 3-minute.
Watching that, and at the end, I'm like, I don't feel guilty. I enjoyed it. And Tyson, given fair opportunities, I think could fight anybody in the world right now. Roy Jones Jr., he just took a paycheck. But Tyson, I'm like, prove me wrong. Put him in the ring. Tyson said he's going to fight again. I don't want any stipulations, no qualifiers. I don't want it orchestrated. I don't want
orchestrated stipulations. But you know what? Like I said, he was happy with 2-minute rounds, dude.
And let's see him fight. Because I saw Foreman do it, and he wasn't nearly as nimble as Tyson. And I don't think he had the power that Mike Tyson still possesses.
So, here's a little bit more tape when it comes to boxing media. This is from the UK. Spencer Fearon, Sky Sports. Listen to the Kell Brook and listen to his thoughts on Kell Brook after the Golovkin. Oh, actually, I think it was the Spence fight. And then, Daniel Dubois.
Let's get straight to it. The major talking point. Did Kell Brook quit Spencer?
No, he didn't. What Kell Brook did, he submitted. There's a big difference. And let's be real. Many people are quick. And that's not me being one of the guys over him and his family.
He quit. He's under my brand. He quit. It's funny. Now, wonder if this holds up. We talked to John about Spence's health. Remember, this is what good old Bobby said, too.
Because I have grave doubts whether Harold Spence will be back in the ring in the foreseeable future. Unfortunately, as that may be, and I have received some inside intelligence that allows me to say that. So, let's pass on Harold Spence.
Now, he was just saying what he was saying as far as for Crawford next fight, you know what I mean, which I totally agree with him. He said he has inside information, but he said he wouldn't fight again. So that is obviously a little different than John's, at this point it's a theory, but yeah, there's a lot of, you just don't know. You just don't know. You know what I mean? You just don't know. All righty, let's kind of move through this stuff here. We have some boxing news, of course, to get to, and then, of course, we're going to kind of mix it in, and usually we mix it in with, the boxing Twitter segment. Boxing Twitter segment, if you're new, it's sometimes it's legit, like, damn, that's a good tweet, well said, good question. Other times it's just some media stuff where you're like, dude, what are you talking about? Or some fanboys that just make you laugh. Boxing Twitter, man, it's a wild, wild world. It's really awesome in some ways. Not as much as it used to be, though, because it's a lot of, oh boy. But talking about the aftermath of Dubois, it was revealed, quote unquote, this is from the Sun on Boxingscene.com, if that makes sense to you, that he has sustained a fractured orbital bone and nerve damage. Once the swelling of the eye is reduced, the area will have more accurate examination where the doctor will determine if surgery is required. He didn't have surgery. The surgeon who twice operated on Kell Brook to fix the fractured orbital bone felt Dubois could have suffered a career-ending blah, 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 blah. As we know, that's possible. We don't know. It is what it is. We'll see, though. We'll frickin' see. Let me see here. We have a couple of news items that I want to get to. I just got to find the hell. Okay. Clarissa Shields. Although she does still plan on fighting in boxing in probably in February, it sounds like. She now joined the PFL, which is like an MMA league. She's making the transition. It's called the Professional Fighters League. Deal is for multiple fights. though she'll continue to box. This is from The Athletic. Originally, her debut is expected to be on April 23rd. Like I said, though, I guess she's still going to keep boxing. Though. It's just right now she hasn't been given a date. You know what I mean? So, oh, yeah. Vinny Paz, Christy Martin, and Chad Dawson were the celebrity judges. 76, 76, 79, 73, and 80, 76. Interesting. Jones, 80 to 76. Oh, boy. But, you know, it is what it is because, after all, what are we really talking about? Now, we don't know exactly how much he made. By the way, Daniel Dubois was up on Joe Joyce. One of the scorecards had it 87-84 for Joyce. The other two, 86-85, 88-83 for Dubois. I did have Dubois up just a hair. This comes from Coppinger, Joseph Diaz Jr. against Shavkat what's his name? Rakimov. They have agreed to a deal. They're not going to have the purse bid that was scheduled. So JoJo makes his first defense of the belt he won from Tevin Farmer. The working date February 20th. So that Coppinger said that could be a terrific action fight. And it sounds like the Farmer thing, that's expired now. That's expired. So, yeah, that is expired. So it's a no-go now on that one. It's a no-go. So, sucks for what's his tails, but, you know, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Let's see. We got some more fight news here. Here's some more. Here's Matthew Macklin. This is what it comes down to again when we talk about people in the business, media members, whatever. This is after the Spence fight. Gutted for Spence, get it for Special K Brooke, you know. Tell Brooke he's tweeting. Sounds like he really fought his heart out, so he hadn't even seen the fight at that point, which is kind of crazy, but who knows? I'm sure he's busy. This is his reaction, though, this last weekend. Well done to Joe Joyce. Just walked through anything Dubois hit him with. There's no nice way to say this, but Dubois quit. Got hit with a clean jab on a damaged eye and sat it out. He's young, but if you've quit, you know, that one time, basically, it's always going to be doubt. But, you know, the other stuff he didn't really cover. Didn't really talk too much about. Ton of other news besides what Jake was talking about early as well. Actually, let me see something real quick. Povetkin did. I guess he's clear now of COVID as far as having it, and he's bounced back to an extent. Povetkin's promoter, this is Boxingscene, decision soon on whether or not White rematch lands in January. Because, you know, when you have it, sometimes it takes you a little bit to get the funk out of you, in a sense, to say that, maybe not that nicely. But, you know, I'm actually looking for that other interview where he said, he's gonna begin to train and kind of take it from there. Nothing to be said about that. We'll see, you know, where that leads us and where that goes. So, yeah. We'll see what's going on with that. To 503, are you wanting to get in here? Because if so, this would be your time and place to do that exact thing. Otherwise, I'm going to start doing that boxing Twitter stuff right here. This is Devin Haney. Bob Arum is everything wrong with boxing. LOL. Saving face for Teofimo Lopez ducking. Weak Hall of Fame promoter tactics. P.S. Stay woke. Someone says WBC emailing out fake belts is everything wrong with boxing. That's a good call. Someone else said champion vacating and petitioning to get a trophy title instead of fighting a mandatory is everything wrong with boxing. I mean, that's a fair point, but he did fight Teofimo Lopez. So, I mean, how this one comes from Dougie Fisher. Looks like two of my uncles fighting at the barbecue. I think he was doing a line from Snoop on that. Yeah, Snoop. I mean, my nephews even said it. Snoop was hilarious, dude. Like, that was a good call. I don't know how much they paid him, but that was a damn good call. If this is what, here we go. This is what will drive some hardcores crazy, but you just got to deal with it. If this is what boxing matches are like in the future, then I'm all for it. Give me awkward performances, hilarious people commentating, washed up hosts out of the woodworks hosting, and random ass fighters that don't know what the F they're doing, so there's a knockout. There's been all sorts of talk about what they actually made, both of them, as far as the commission goes, the California Athletic Commission. Both were guaranteed $1 million, but I've heard $10 million to over $20 million for Tyson. It's tough to say. I don't really know exactly, who got paid or whatever. This is Raging Babe. This seems like a huge waste of money. I don't see a return on investment. JC learned quick that music performances don't work on the fight. I don't think Wiz is driving up any pay-per-view buys. But, hey, I like Black and Yellow. I like that. And I do actually remember a follow-up tweet of her saying, breaking down, well, if you paid him $50,000, does that get you enough or whatever? And, she makes a good point. I also think, though, that the big picture, they're not necessarily trying to make money on this one event. This type of name recognition, whether it's Entertainer or Tyson or Jones or whatever, or Snoop, like we mentioned, even if they didn't make, because they spent so much damn money on this, especially the influencers online, it's going to lead to more investment. The whole thing is they're not looking at it necessarily on we need to make money on this pay-per-view, or Fox likes a little on their bottom line for boxing. Okay, cool. We'll make some money on that. Even if the pay-per-view doesn't break even, they still get paid. So, and that's part of the Fox PBC structure there. So, but with this, even if they spent so much money where they ended up barely breaking even or not, it's going to bring future investment. And there's a lot of celebrity investors in this, and then they can get some big wigs possibly. And then it's like a what if type of deal, right? Like, well, if we did this, if we did that, and some of that, has to do with Tyson Roy Jones. You know what I mean? I mean, that's what it is. All right, we're going to take a break in the Fight News Boxing Twitter, and we're going to go ahead out to Portland and put him on and see what he has to say. Portland, what's going on, buddy? How the hell are you, man? 503, you on? There we go.
Yo, what up? Yo, what up, Chris? Oh, I'm doing good here, in the cold-ass, beautiful Oregon, man. The temperatures, man, it's crazy, but a lot of shit went down over the weekend, a lot to talk about. But how you doing, Chris? How's everything?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, thanks for and also too. Let me just say, hope you had a good Thanksgiving too, man, with your family and everything, you friends and family. Want to wish you that too. A late one, forgot about that. So But also, let's get into it, brother. Lot to talk about. Tyson, Roy Jones Jr., man. I'm actually happy with all the, because like last week, Chris, we were talking, man, and I was upset about how the rules and all that and whatever, how it wasn't kind of really a real fight. I was upset about it, and so that's the reason I didn't buy the pay-per-view, and I'm actually kind of happy. I kind of not buy, in all honesty, not buy it because like just the fight alone was not what I expected. Tyson brought it though. I mean, his side was pretty good, but Roy Jones, man, he was just boxing, holding, and he had to do his thing. But can't hate it, you know what I mean? What I liked about it is that really nothing bad happened. Because a lot of people were anticipating that. I think a lot of people were worried more for Roy Jones in this fight. But I mean, He made it through. I mean, you know what I mean? So, but Tyson, man, Tyson was in shape, man. If you've seen him, man, at the weigh-ins, he looked pretty good. And also too, man, Roy Jones, man, like I like him and everything, but it's like, I don't know, man. It's like you got to kind of show up to a fight. I mean, I get it. Do what you got to do. And I don't know. I really can't complain. I didn't buy the pay-per-view, so I don't know. If I could just say something, because I thought it was going to be more of a good fight, but Roy Jones did because I had to watch it on the replay, you know what I mean, on YouTube.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean. So, but I mean, I watched it, but I was like, whoa, dude. I was like, yeah. Not what I expected, but it was all right, you know what I mean? And also, too, the co-main, I forget, what's that dude, the Paul, the other YouTuber, versus that basketball player,
Jake
man.
Paul, Nate Robinson.
Yeah, if I could comment, bro, if I could comment real quick, man, it's like, the fight is kind of, that was like a real, like casual fans fight, you know what I mean? Like, dude, I saw this thing trending like crazy, man. That KO was trending, man, and, boy, man, right away, bro. Like, I'm sure you saw it too, Chris. And you know what I mean. And man, like in all honesty, too, man, it kind of like I was like, man, I kind of felt bad for this guy. Like, man, it's just like, the guy got knocked out. He's not a real fighter. He's like a basketball player. I really don't know too much about him, but that's what I knew. And the guy just, I don't know, just it was kind of messed up. And then also too, if I could, I'm not a real big fan of Floyd, but with how Floyd, kind of had to respond to it, and everybody was trending, that trend of his. Floyd, took decided to, post up a photo of them together and saying, he said some, kind things, and I know I got to give Floyd respect for that because, man, that was like out of all that shit, man. I feel really bad, man. It's just like, because the guy's not a real fighter, and if it's a fighter alone, like me, like for an example, like me, when Manny Pacquiao got knocked out, we celebrated, but it was just for that night, After all, you know what I mean? It's the guy we wish him well, you know what I mean? We don't want him to, we want him to go back home to his kids and family. So, but man, I don't know, because that KO was pretty knocked out. I mean, it was a pretty good knockout, you know what I mean? And especially I think the guy had just too much experience for this guy, because I don't know, for a basketball player, I don't know, you know what I mean? It's just like in there, it just shows like the other dude had a little bit more skills. I don't know. That was just my take of it, but as far as that,
doing it
was,
too. You're right. That
yeah.
Jake Paul can
mismatch
punch
like
straight. He can punch straight. I got to give him that. I mean, he's not fighting boxers, but then again, he's not acting like he's going to go fight all these boxers either. He's being realistic.
Yeah. And so it's like, if he could make fights like some ridiculous fights, why not? You know what I mean? But kind of have like your level, I would say, because the guy, that opponent of his that night was kind of, you could just tell it wasn't going good for him. But as far as that dude, they were talking. I saw something on Twitter too, if I can mention, just like he was talking about fighting some MMA dudes. I think that's pretty fun. I wouldn't mind that. That sounds kind of fun for Jake Paul's side. As a casual side speaking. But yeah, man. As far as that, it was okay. I'm glad I'm glad I didn't really buy it. I just just because the weird rules that were ahead of for Tyson and all that, but also too let me get into it real quick. Let me mention Shields in the PFL real quick, man. I think this is crazy. I think this takes a lot of guts. I think Shields is nuts for doing this, but man, I wish her the best of luck. I think if you notice, Chris, I don't know if you follow this, but PFL is like an MMA league that has a tournament base where you fight at the beginning of the year and then it ends at New Year's night, where it's like the winner gets $1 million, and it's a tournament-based kind of thing.
Okay. Okay.
And Shields is not part of that tournament, and I just want to mention that because that's from the article that I read that she's not part of the tournament, so she's going to be having a singles fight, that kind of don't really. I don't know if she's going for a belt because they do have belts, but it's structured really weird in the tournament. So it's like the champion's in the tournament, so it's like he could lose, like that champion could lose it within the tournament. So it's like it's kind of weird, but. I don't know. I just got to say this takes a lot of guts for Shields' part, man. So if I could just, she gets a lot of negative press for always talking, but I think I don't know. She's putting her her fist where her money is. You know what I mean. So I think in all honesty, for fight fans, you got to respect this, man, because this is MMA, man. Dude, this is fucking knees, fucking elbows, takedowns, and we all know Shields is a boxer, man, and. I don't know, but she's still young enough to do pretty good in it. I believe. So if they build her up correctly and not just throw in there with the Sharks, I think we could see something good. But I don't know. I mean, even the, like, for an example, like even like a girl like Amanda Serrano didn't really take really well in MMA too. So, but I'm wishing her for success. But like, if I could say something, is that Shields deserves a lot of credit for this, because this is put in tough. I mean. People are kind of discrediting her wins right now for boxing, right? They're kind of not tough or whatever tough. But, I mean, I think this is being put in tough. I mean, like in a legal street fight, I think this takes a lot of guts. So I just want to mention that real quick for Shields, because, damn, I think this takes a lot of guts, man, and just to say that. But also, we got this weekend, man, the main event, man. I can't wait for this one. This one's pretty dope. Errol Spence Jr., Danny Garcia, man. I think this is pretty solid. It's kind of weird, right, for Spence getting into this fight after his accident. I wish him well, definitely, man. And but in my take, man, I would have thought if I was advising Spence, I would have told him to take like more than a year after the accident. I would have suggested like 2 years off. You know what I mean? I think because everybody's human, man. That shit. Seeing that car accident again, man, and that's pretty brutal, man. And then seeing those photos that got released, that dude looked like he was in bad condition. So, but we'll see what happens, man. I could be totally wrong about this, man. And I'm just wishing for a really great fight, a memorable fight to talk about to end the end of the year. I think is this the PBC's real like big last main event, I believe, right? For them and. So I just wish for a good fight, man. And what can I say? But also too, if I could mention one thing, I'm rooting for Danny Garcia just because Boricuas. But for all the Boricuas out there, man, stand up. I'm Mexican, so I'm hoping he pulls it off, man. I'm hoping for the upset. I think this is a beautiful time to capitalize on for Danny Garcia because of the accident and everything. So, but for real, I just hope for like a great fight, like just a memorable fight to talk about. Tuesday when the Rope-A-Dope radio comes on, man, you know what I mean? So, but yeah, and but as far as that, also, before I get out of here, man, let me just mention, you were talking about not Danny, what's his name? Oscar De La Hoya getting back in, calling out Triple G. I'm all about that. If that's going to happen, I hope, Triple G takes it.
It may happen, dude. It may happen.
So, I hope
Cinco de Mayo.
Cinco de Mayo, baby. Yeah, I'm all about that, man. And because I mean, let's just do it. I mean, Triple G. I mean, have you seen his next opponent? It's not really a big name. If he wants a big name, and you know what I mean, like I don't want to dog on him, because he's a boxer. I want to respect him, and I don't want to be one of those people like really trolling. But just like I don't know, come on, Triple G. You could choose a lot better opponent than that. I mean. Andre is there. I don't know. Move up and wait. You could do something, man. It's just like you don't always have to wait for Canelo's big payday. Just sitting around. Just for you sitting around. You know, what I mean, staying busy. Like it's just, come on, dude.
Yeah, who cares?
Make some noise, man.
It's a mandatory. Who cares? Drop the belts in if that's the fight.
Yeah. But I mean, whatever. He's gonna do it. But if Oscar De La Hoya is making talking about Triple G, at least that makes it exciting for Triple G's career, you know what I mean? In my opinion, you know what I mean? Because it's just, I don't know. Yeah, you know what I mean. Like I hate to dog on Triple G, but I'm a Canelo fan, so I kind of got to do it. And but yeah, man. But also too, man. Chris, let me thank you for having me on, bro. Viva Rope Dope Radio and Viva Mexico.
There you be. Thanks as always, man. I hope you had a good holiday as well. Yeah, I mean, in good for the zone. I mean, you could say what the hell you want about the fight, but hey, it would sign up some subs. It would sign up some subs. We know we never got it on there, but we know both Canelo and Golovkin fights, 1 and 2, both did over $1 million on pay-per-view, and that was asking $80 or whatever. So $20 or $100 for the whole year, that could be good, man. You put Ryan Garcia on the undercard. I'm just saying. We'll see if it happens. I don't know, but I'm not gonna act like I wouldn't watch it. It's part of my subscription, dude. This actually just came in. This is from an Instagram live stream from Terrence Bud Crawford. He's talking about the Spence and all that. On Spence next, of course. Some of these quotes, he says, "Let's be real. If you know boxing, why should we consider Danny Garcia a top welterweight in the division?" And that's my boy. I ain't hating on him or nothing. I want to hear from the people. Can anybody tell me why, and this is, a good point, can anybody tell me why Danny Garcia is a top welterweight in the division? I ain't mad at Danny. Like you said, Danny's my boy. I'm cool with Danny. I came up with Danny. I'm just speaking facts. I'm speaking facts because everybody always slamming my record, coming at my throat, saying this and that, and I got to give it back sometimes, which is fair. Let's be real. Danny ain't beat nobody at welterweight division, and that is true. He talks about Malignaggi and Robert Guerrero and all that. So if Errol beats Danny, I'm not saying it's going to be a walk in the park, Danny can fight his ass off. That's why I consider him one of the top welterweights in the division. Not taking away his 2 close losses that he had. I got him up there, but at the same time, if we're going by the media, he's not a top welterweight. And, he's making a fair point. He did his thing, he went on to say a bunch of stuff. Errol Spence, he fought Kell Brook, he beat Kell Brook, Sean Porter. Sean Porter ain't beat a top welterweight, y'all claim. He did beat Danny Garcia, but to him, that's not a top welterweight, so I understand what he's saying. But in my eyes, Sean Porter done fought all the welterweights there is to fight, but Terrence Crawford. Sean Porter is another one that came up short in a lot of fights. Well, a few fights, but he made them close. Thurman, he got, that was close. But when you talk about the number one guy in the division, well, we got to be talking about Terrence Crawford. Well, based off what you just told us, Terrence, are we sure you have to be number one? I really want to fight Spence just to shut up everybody. Well, I can understand him getting sick of hearing it, and if the fight's going to happen, it's going to happen. He was talking about 60-40. Spence is talking about that. But now he says, I really want to fight Spence just to shut everybody up and see what they're going to say after, because I know that there's going to be a lot of excuses and bad weighing and shifting. It's going to be wild, and that would be true. I actually got Spence beating Garcia, but at the same time, I don't know. He goes on to say a bunch of stuff, too. He thinks he's number one. I think I'm number one. That's the friction, yada, yada, yada. So, that actually just popped up on badlook.com. Bad left hook with that bad look. What the fuck am I talking about? Badlefthook.com. My bad. I know dude too. He's cool dude. I don't know him personally per se, but I feel bad for badlefthook.com. Everybody knows that. A lot of people go to that, rightfully so. All right, let's get to boxing Twitter and let's shut this thing down. Oh, here's actually from Alan Dawson. Good follow, Alan Dawson Sport, at Alan Dawson Sport on Twitter. It's a really good follow, by the way. This is Copy Box. 433 of Joe Joyce's 544 punches, total punches, were jabs. He landed 98 of them, 22% accuracy. I mean, that jab definitely won the fight. This is from Lou DeBella on Twitter. Any U.S. network streaming service that provides women with a regular platform will be rewarded handsomely for it. The cost of this show could fund a monthly series of that little action or passion in women's. You just don't. And that's what they're talking about, the zone that Jacobs Rosado. This is from Julian J. Rock Williams, who's now in the Crunk Gym. Question, why are UK promoters more willing than U.S. promoters to risk their undefeated fighters, future champions, on domestic level so early? P.S. I love it. I think it's because of the diehard UK boxing fan base. What do y'all think? I think that's what it is, too, because we've seen that over the years to Gale and Groves. I mean, we've seen it. I think that they're willing to come back to you if it's not so caught up into that. Here's Shakur Stevenson. I came from nothing. I could never lose. That's a really good tweet. I came from nothing, so I mean, in the end, I really couldn't ever lose. You know what I mean? I like that. Bright future on that young gentleman. Teofimo Lopez. Oh yeah, my minimum. And we don't know if this is on paper, folks. Just remember that. We haven't heard what Bob has to say. But Teofimo has been on Instagram himself or with Broly talking like, hey, they got to pay me now. Now, I'm the A side, and we talked a little bit about that last week. They got to pay me. He says $5 million minimum now. And this is only the beginning. Soon I'll shoot for $20 million minimum. Take a lesson out of my book. In order to make big dollars, you have to take a risk. And that is true. Now, we'll see how quickly you get to $20 million. I hope he does. That would be dope. But that Australian matchup, where it's a doubleheader where they bring potentially Maloney and Franco over there for a trilogy 2 against Cambulos or whatever that dude's name is. Cambulos, I think it is. He's been talking about, even Bob talked about this too, that it was a healthy-ass offer. And Teofimo more than once has said that it's $9 million to go to Australia. So that's almost double your guarantee. But he's saying, now you got to show me the money, because we all saw what Top Rank and Bob did to Teofimo, went around and did the press run saying, take it or leave it. We'll have you fight some no-name for $300,000 if that's what you want. We'll bring you back there. And then all of a sudden, ESPN stepped up with a couple $100,000, and boom, what do you know? We got a fight. So we'll see. We'll see how that. I'm wondering how this is all going to go. But he says, I'm not stepping in the ring for $5 million or less. But then they also said, and I kind of did follow up with Devin Haney, what he was saying on this tweet. They also said in Teofimo, not just Bob, the promoter, which he would say this, of course, because he's a promoter. But Teofimo says Devin Haney's not worthy, he's not ready, he's got to fight somebody. So if he beats someone solid, that's a little funky, because didn't you say you'll fight anybody? But I understand, and this is where some hardcore fight fans hate this, and they love a guy. When Keith Thurman was coming up, he was calling out everybody under the sun, shit, even Floyd Mayweather. This guy, that guy. And then all of a sudden you get to a point and you're like, you know what? I'm going to take my time and do the right thing. And people hate that. And so they find the next person. No, I like that. I mean, you got people on Twitter now, and some of it's just PBC bias, but screw welterweight. 140 is where it's at. And it's like, well, okay, dude. Sure. Oscar De La Hoya from the Sirius Boxing, Sirius XM boxing show, he was saying other stuff, not just about him fighting, but he talked about Ryan Garcia. Ryan Garcia is going to be the biggest career ever, more than any fighter we've promoted in the past. He has the it factor. Ryan Garcia is the equivalent of Brad Pitt and Elvis Presley and Oscar De La Hoya all wrapped into one. Way to put a little pressure on him. But I understand what he's saying. Here's Oscar De La Hoya on that same Sirius XM talking about the UFC, talking about Dana White. I'm actually urged Dana White to try and do something with the sport of boxing. Why not? I actually wouldn't mind sitting down with Dana White and figuring something out. Imagine that. UFC, Golden Boy partnering up and taking boxing by storm, which is another reason why I really don't know what that reworked DAZN Golden Boy looks like. If there's 3 years left on that deal, I do not know about that. Here's Raging Babe, who obviously is a good follower too. Most people know that already, but might as well say it. I know of a few fighters asking for releases. They want to find their own fight. Fighters love to say this is the business. And every business man, but every business person wants to make back the money they put into them. It's called ROI. If I put $30,000 to a fighter, I'm not just walking away either. That's a great point. That's a great point. This is Kevin Iole, who was just pumping. Instead of talking about Showtime, when they announced in the summer that solid schedule, right? Got everybody excited. Well, some people. He didn't write an article for like 5 days. He's just Roy Jones, Tyson, Roy Jones, Tyson, which I get. But you could tell that was the theme that they had to do. That's usually the DAZN influencing deal is similar. You can sign up. Literally anybody technically can sign up for that DAZN thing. I broke it down one day. You can Google it. It's a real thing. And it's basically like that preview week, or the announcement week, I should say, when Tyson and Roy Jones announced. It was basically like a flood of it, and then you're going to see basically the impressions, and then you go from there. And it didn't seem like his impressions were that impressive. Sorry, I had that cheesy shit. He's hearing that Tyson will make $10 million, Roy Jones will make $3 million. I don't really know. I really don't know. Legit question for legit boxing media. Why is everyone so upset when you waited so long to get the real specific actual rules to an exhibition when you knew all along it was an exhibition and there's no standard set of rules for it? Thank you. Exactly. What are you so freaking surprised about if you're a media member? I understand fans not knowing it, but media members, I mean, this was pushed. There's emails that you can't just listen to the promoter. Don't get mad, media members. You should have already known. You know what I mean? Since Keith Thurman last fought, Errol Spence will have fought Sean Porter, suffered a terrible crash, recovered from the crash, and fought Danny Garcia. That's true. Thurman did obviously put up a hell of a fight against Pacquiao a summer ago. And he did have, a hand injury or whatever. But, yeah, that is kind of an interesting point. But, when you think about it, and I'll say this, Thurman did mess up the welterweight division, whether it was, clearly he had injuries, but just how long he was going to be out from them and motivation and all that, something he's talked about too. It is what it is. It did put some funk on that division for a second because they couldn't match him up. He was out. But he has gone Danny Garcia. I'm sorry. His last 4 fights are Sean Porter, Danny Garcia, Jose Cito Lopez, and Manny Pacquiao. So, yes, that's a good tweet and a funny-ass tweet. But let's keep it in perspective now. The last 4 fights are pretty damn good. This is from Jake. And by the way, Jake in the box. Jake NDA box. That's how you follow Jake. Donovan, follow his ass. He said, I'm going to put this out there. The number of boxing writers, podcasters, enthusiasts who have been prominently hyping tonight's show is a bit startling. It's almost as if I'm on a short list of boxing media not getting paid to promote this event. Okay, back to the show. And, man, did he hit that on the nose. The truth is, this is Mark Ortega, the truth is the spectacle of it. Hold on, it's all cut off. I think it says spectacle. The spectacle of it. Hold on, I can't read that. Okay, someone just sent me this. The truth is the spectacle fights are clearly going to continue probably until someone really gets hurt, and that's hopefully what doesn't happen, but it is a good point. The promoters and networks running boxing destroyed the mass fan base by putting so much of it behind paywalls over the years. Not just pay-per-view, but HBO and Showtime as well. Few know who stars are today or care, so we have these type of speculants getting major media from clueless media. Yeah, I mean, that's what happens. You know, that is what happens. That is a true statement. All right, we got just a couple more minutes. We got to get into some really funny ones, though, dude. So Jake Paul seems like an absolute fucking nightmare of a person, but he's actually not a terrible fighter. If he wants to pursue it, fuck it, let him. This isn't a real sport anyway. That's funny. And like I said, man, if they're going to get in the ring and they used to know who these people are, dude, you know, like if they're going to get in the ring, I'd rather them strap up with boxing freaking gloves and get into the squared circle out in the octagon. It's just, you can say whatever the hell you want about it, but I like John's idea of maybe the classic old fighter or Jake Paul is the co-feature rather than having that being the main event, because I'm just not a big fan of exhibition fights on pay-per-view. I don't think that's – I know I got called a hater a bunch in the DMs and all that when I read the rules, but just giving the people a heads up, because down the stretch of that fight week, they weren't being truthful. And so I don't knock the hustle unless it's a hustle. See what I'm saying? Two different things. Oh, yeah, Wilder. You can see me. This is on the Last Stand podcast. You can see me back in the ring sometime in the first week of January to early February. We're looking through opponents now. We're not going to sit around and wait for some coward Fury who has an obligation to fulfill but ran away. We got to get back in the ring. Now that whoever I'm coming back to the ring, it's going to – no, or he says no, that whoever I come with, it's going to come with a purpose. That you can say a lot about Wilder of late, but we know he comes with a purpose. Okay, one more. And this is the classic way to end the segment and end the show. Twitter can just be so goofy out there. But this one, I'm not going to say it tops the cake for all Twitter segments that I've had, but if – and this is what cats will hate about a Tyson or especially like a Jake Paul, right? If Jake Paul landed them shots on AJ's chin, is what the lead tweet is. And it's like that. I honestly think AJ would either go to sleep or jack in the corner. What the hell does that mean, jack in the corner? I think if AJ still has a title in a year or two after Jake has a few more fights, he should go for it. He would need to be careful coming in as AJ would run away like he did versus Ruiz Jr. But Paul has pretty quick feet, and I reckon he could flatten Joshua. Just being honest. Isn't he like $180 though? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Anyway, tell me that wasn't some ridiculous shit to end with. It was. Anyway, we're going to get out of here. Enjoy the fights this weekend. We'll be back. Peace.
Once you become the world champion, I believe that you feel you have the upper hand. So now, as you fight, let's say you fight 4 or 5 years of straight survival, the bullshit, the whole bag, and when you become the world champion, you're like, you know what, I made it. Now I'm going to show you it's different. So I'm going to get every dollar worth of what I deserve. Why? Because